in America, we just live too fast.
Well, here's the thing. If we actually were just nice to each other for a change and stop trying to be power hungry, and yes, power exists, but the majority of people just want to live.
Right.
That's it.
It's facts.
Yeah.
All the other pressures of trying to be the first, trying to move up in corporate America, like, that's cool.
Right.
But for what I saw in Brazil, there's an understanding that elders are important.
For sure.
Right? You prioritize them. You know, the generational code is passed down. Everyone eats together. Everyone's outside together. You grow your own food.
Right.
I know we're trying to do that here in America, but like that is actually just the way of life. And that they, in some places, folks get their water source from the mountain. I'm like,
that's fire.
We here trying to buy $10 bottles of mountain water. I'm like, it's actually coming down the stream.
Crazy. We were just talking about
It
that
blew
too.
my
You
mind.
can't even buy eggs right now.
Right.
$7 for.
No.
Yeah, I saw $7
I
a
seen
day.
8-9, bro.
You see the thing?
That's
where
Don't even
crazy.
try to get organic. Nah, it's crazy.
Like,
You might have to figure out other substitutes, and that I think is gonna force most of us to eat differently because of that.
or
Like,
become self-sustainable. My mom was talking about, let's get some chickens in the backyard.
I mean, I
feel
ain't
you.
mad at
Might
that.
have
I
to.
saw a couple.
You
of
gotta check
I-
into that though. I know with Boston specifically, you can't have.
You can't.
Oh,
do
I don't live in
anything
Boston.
I know,
Massachusetts.
I'm just saying for certain people, it's like
bro,
you have
the
to
way
check
the
in with where
turkeys
you
be
live.
running wild, bro, like, I can get a couple chickens.
I know that's right.
I can get a couple chickens. You'll be all right. You'll get some
Where you
chickens,
stay,
bro.
bro? I don't think so.
I mean, maybe not me personally. In fact, maybe not me personally, but like, I can see someone having chickens in their backyards. I think it's crazy too, because like,
Just don't
I
get
saw
caught.
something earlier where they had said that like farmers don't own like the genetic rights to the seeds for the produce that they plant and that they
Oh,
harvest.
okay.
Yeah.
Like they have to purchase it from a company, like the seeds, and then like if there's even like any mistakes, they can sue like the company that owns the genetics to those like that specific livestock. I mean, not the livestock, like those crops can sue them, and it happens
For
like all the time.
misuse and negligence?
Yeah, no, for fraud and but like what do they call it fraud, but it's also like illegal like genetic reproduction of a gene code that they own for a
Interesting.
specific line of produce.
Oh,
Like
yeah,
their
that
corn,
IP
they don't
is
own the
serious.
seeds.
Yeah.
They don't own the genetics to those corn.
Is
to
that like
corn.
is that like a reputation thing?
No?
That's a Monsanto thing.
Yeah.
Explain this to me.
So they own the farmland,
Yes.
Makes
right?
sense.
And they own the produce that comes from the farm, but they do not own the genetic code to the seeds.
Right.
So unless they make their own like of genetic variant of corn,
I didn't know farmers are doing that.
I mean, they're not.
Like, you
They're
know,
not.
like
That's what I'm
mix,
saying.
like breeding different
They're not doing-
crops and
they're
stuff.
not.
So then how does the mutation happen?
It doesn't. That's what I'm saying. It's illegal for it to happen because it
Interesting.
has to come from the original gene code, which comes from the
Interesting.
seeds
Interesting.
that they have to
Okay.
purchase from the companies.
And the
So it's
other
like,
thing is, the sad part is that those seeds can kill soil really quickly.
Yep. Yep.
Right. That's the problem.
That's the play.
Right. And so now when it comes to the aquifers, the wells closer to the surface of the core, that's being depleted rapidly around the country. So we're going to literally run out of just basic well water across the country. And so there's going to be a money war at some point. A water war at some point about where people have to get their water to actually cover large crops
Right.
that are run by certain companies.
it's crazy.
So I look at someone like Bill Gates, like he's playing a long game.
While
Buying up
trying to, like, as much
so much
middle America
yeah,
land
like
as
so
possible.
much cattle, so much
And
just
that is why
resources.
moving to another country as a person of color might be the better way.
I've been telling you
Granted,
this, man.
we can be considered.
My mind has been opened a little bit more to the idea of living outside of America. I couldn't do it before, but just with the way that politics is going and it just feels like our input isn't being recognized. Like,
I mean, it may
there-
not be recognized anywhere else either because we would be considered gentrifiers as well.
Right.
Right. So it's either
unless you go back to, if you have some
if you
kind
do,
of direct lineage
absolutely.
to somewhere, you know.
which is important. Everyone know their ancestry because you just never know.
So he's going to Haiti.
I
Beautiful.
wouldn't mind that.
You going to Trinidad?
I guess.
Where would you
I
be?
guess.
I guess. Are we gonna see, bro? Like,
Hey, man.
I visit there too. I have some questions.
that's all I'm like. Oh,
Where would you go?
So I learned that my dad's side is originally from St. Lucia. So
Okay.
if
St. Lucia's
anything,
beautiful.
I go to St. Lucia. It's expensive, but I'm like, it has all of the agricultural conditions to actually just buy some land and grow something.
Yeah, and just be self-sustainable.
And I think that's fine. Again, I don't think our lives have to be complex because
Yeah.
we're in a country of consumerism, right?
Yeah.
All you need is food, water, shelter, and that
Right.
shelter doesn't have to be
The most
40 million
lavish.
square feet.
Yeah.
Exactly.
At best, it's probably 500. If you have a family, at most, it's 1,100. Everything else is extra.
Right.
We've created all these different layers on top of just like the basic survival needs and created a game in itself that's just multi-layered and more complex. And when we even talk about like just mental health just increasing over, the past decades, a century, it's just because of all the barriers like we've like self-imposed ones that we've
absolutely.
created for ourselves.
Yeah, I mean, my experience in Brazil was I didn't worry about a damn thing. The sun was chasing me everywhere I was going because it knew I needed it,
Yeah.
right? Just eating the food literally changed the entire chemistry of my body in 12 days.
How so? Like, what did you feel differently?
I didn't feel groggy. I had no headaches. I had no body aches. I had no body pains. I could focus. And that feeling of fullness was a smaller plate than what the traditional American size is.
It's fire. That's I think the part that you mentioned about just like that focus. I think that's the part that I think people underestimate a lot. It's like it's not just so much that it's like the chemicals and all that stuff, but it's also the way that the food is processed. Like there's very unnatural means that we're going about to get our food. You feel me? And I feel like that is taken away like from. It's just like what we talk about when we talk about the like the indigenous people of this land. It's like you have to value the earth, you have to value the food, you have to value like everything, and like it's coming back to you. You feel me? Because you're giving back to it.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? So like if you're not engaging in those practices, you're not engaging in that process. If the food is like overly processed, if the food is being like tortured before it's being consumed,
Right.
it's like
You think that plays a part?
Yeah, for sure.
Like,
Yeah,
if there
lot
was
of
some type of
cultures, a lot
trauma
of cultures,
and your
bro.
goat
Yeah,
goat
sure.
meat is gonna.
It's like, bro, it's coming.
It's a very common thing.
It's the way
kid
that
you
a lot of different
not, I
cultures.
kid you
Impacts it.
not. I'm a huge M&M peanut fan. Okay.
Mhm.
And I went into
Okay, peanut M&M.
a pharmacy store in Brazil and I just looked at the ingredients. It was like 4 or 5 lines shorter
Yeah.
than the
than
American,
the American
yeah.
one.
That's that's
the
the way it is in
FDA
like Europe
it's fire.
too. You
And
know?
FDA is in the game of more so
Ooh,
we're
killing
not trying
people.
to
Killing people.
put the best ingredients. It's more so if you could validate within your own company, it's passable as
the
safe.
bare minimum, right? It's
Then
not
it's
even
like we're not going to question it.
Yeah.
It's like,
There's
is
no
it
actual
food?
validation. You know, like there's
will
no,
it
there's
kill
no
people? Like that's
there's
like
no checking really
Will it
going
kill
on.
people today?
It's crazy because
And
like,
that's
if
the
not,
sad part. I mean,
liability. That's all they care
Facts.
about. Am I liable if something happens to people?
Yeah.
Like that's really all that matters.
I think the other thing for me is majority of the stuff that I was eating that was even packaged, the substitution of white sugar for sugar cane
Mhm.
was significant for me, where I thought my blood pressure was going to go up. It literally did this the entire time.
steady.
Steady, which is crazy because when I came back home, we had to do a pit stop at JFK, and I'm like, I could feel my body like, oh, this is not good.
Here we go again.
we
Heart,
back.
like, everything was dry. Like again, the sun was chasing me. I guess the sun knew that I needed it, but to know that everything that I was digesting, like I had fresh olive oil. It is very different than what is in the bottle.
Yeah.
Okay. Like literally they took the olives that was somewhere next door and then they made it and then it came out on my plate. Like it was beautiful. But also just the appreciation of the natural herbs and spices that are coming from the land itself makes
Yeah.
a difference.
For sure.
You know? For me, I would absolutely move my family to Brazil.
It's an adjustment to say the least. Cause like I don't know if I'm even built for that.
mean-
I remember like going to the country
love
land
technology
where
too
my
much,
girls.
low-key.
If my parents could do it, I could do it.
I'm
No,
saying.
no,
You feel me? Like it's that simple.
I
Like,
remember they had like milk straight from the cow and was
Yes.
like, yo, you want to drink this? I'm like, give me,
He's
give
like,
me,
no,
give me that process though. Give me that process
He's like, do
immediately.
you have hood?
I can't play that game.
Well, you know that I thought that was interesting because they had like I would say the milkman come through and I was like, I haven't seen a milkman since like the early mid 80s maybe at best.
Yeah.
But it's all about what are you willing to give up, right?
Mhm.
And if you understand the basics of living as food, water, shelter, wherever you take up space, you make it what it is.
That's
Right.
valid.
Everything else, you're gonna have to learn those life skills anyway, so you might as well learn them somewhere else, in my opinion, because we just don't have it here.
It's true.
Words to live by.
No, seriously. And like I said, with the way things are going, we might have to start considering these things. We might have to take
been thinking
a
about
couple
it.
steps back. But I mean, let's
Gotta
really
go
kick
beyond
it off. Let's get into it.
consideration.
I love the conversation we were having. It's a very important conversation to have,
Yes.
and it's insightful. And I appreciate your perspective on that. But we definitely got to get into this because we got a special guest in the building.
Oh.
You know, hey man, you already know how we rocking. It's another episode of Bad for the Community. Rob the 508 God on the mic. Got St. East to my left.
What up?
Nate Nix to my right.
Hello, how you doing?
And we are back with a special guest. And I know I definitely overuse the word special, but I do mean it most of the time. But I definitely mean it this time because we've got the founder, the director of BAMS Fest. That's the Boston Arts and Music Soul Festival. I hope people are familiar with that, especially our listeners being here. I hope they've had the chance to attend it because, you know, the work that Kat's been doing is transformational, to say the least, in terms of, you know, protecting our art spaces, especially within the Black community. And she does work as a culture and arts director at the Boston Foundation. So I would just like us to make some noise for none other than Catherine Morris.
Oh,
Yeah, drop the
Is this-
bombs.
is this-
I think it's that one.
Is it this
I
one?
think it is.
It is.
This is crazy. I wasn't confident. I was
like-
like, you know what?
y'all
Kat,
are
how-
lovely.
How you doing?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm calm. I'm upright, as they say.
I love to hear that. And
Yeah.
you know, we get on these microphones and we talk about the Boston music scene and how much we have love for it.
All the
And we
time.
try to advocate for it, but there's still levels that we need to get
I
to
was
to
gonna
do
say
the work
facts.
that you're doing. You know, we talk the talk, but you're really walking the walk. You know, to say the least. You know, and I don't know where to start this journey. I don't know if we like take it all the way back because, you know, just kind of, you know, doing some research on your beginnings, it kind of feels like there's just been moments in your life that kind of I don't know, set the stage
Yeah.
for where you're at now.
Right.
You know, a story that we're very familiar with, not myself personally, but I know a lot of people who've been a part of like the METCO program and, you know, going from their communities in Boston and being, I don't want to say shipped off, but
No, it's true.
it's shipped off. We can say shipped off.
Shipped off. Yeah.
And going, you know, to these suburban communities and having to integrate with, you know, people who just don't look like us. You know what I mean? And I've seen arguments for both sides, but where do you stand on that? And you know, how did that experience kind of shape you?
Yeah, I mean, so I am the youngest of 5 children, and my youngest brother, who's older than me, he got into the METCO program first. So he started at Wayland. And at that time, you can do a 2-for-1. So if a sibling's in, you can bring in another sibling. So I didn't have to go through
that's
the
the method.
process.
I
So
did
at
not know
this
that.
time, like, was this like a lottery program? Like, did people feel lucky to be a part of the METCO
at that
program in the
time,
beginning?
Because at that time, it was really black and white. It wasn't international yet. Like, that's where METCO is now.
That's it.
So at that point, I ended up going into the Lincoln school system. And I started in 2nd grade because I went to BPS up until 1st grade. I went to the Winthrop School in Roxbury. But I got bored and it was just a lot to have 2 children in 2 different school systems. So I entered in 2nd grade. And it was hard because literally my life for the next 11 years was getting up at 5, be out the house by 6, be on the bus by 6:45 to be to school by 8.
So that's over an hour commute.
Yes. And then from 8 to 3 be in school. And then if I had extracurriculars, I'd have to stay in the suburbs at least till 5 or 6 o'clock, and you better not miss the bus.
Facts.
Because you're not getting home.
You're not gonna
Or
get
your
it.
mama gonna have to come get you somebody.
Yeah.
And then to get home, and then if you didn't do your homework while you were at school, then you had at least another 2 hours, and I was in bed by 9 o'clock and repeated that every day.
Somehow they expect you to be energized and
Yeah,
awake
literally.
in class. Like,
But we're doing them a favor. We're giving them better education.
Essentially,
right?
what you had to do is you had to sleep on the bus, and then if you were fortunate to have breakfast at home, then you got to sleep at least maybe another 15 minutes before the bell rang,
During that
and then you
breakfast
just started your day.
go about your day.
I know a lot of people who said like they would there's families that might take them in, like,
Yeah,
and
I had a
after
host
school.
family.
Okay,
I had a
a
host family, and I still talk to that host family. I love my host family. I was very fortunate with this particular host
I was
family.
saying, I heard some horror stories. With the
Yeah,
host, no
really?
cap.
and those are very true.
Yeah.
But you know what my experience was in METCO was racism hit at second grade. I got dropped off with 98 other black and brown students in a cul-de-sac in Lincoln. And the first person to call me the N-word was a little Hispanic kid named Chaz. I'll never forget him. And the person who fought my battle when that happened was a white girl who's one of my best friends who happened to be my host family named Jessica.
Really?
And she always came to my defense because she just wrong is wrong and right is right. Like she protected me up until a point.
As it should be.
Shout out Jessica.
I know, shout out to Jessica. Chaz, you're bad for the community.
was like,
That's
Chaz?
clear. We don't rock with you
That's
here.
crazy.
But you know, literally,
Chaz is a crazy name. No cap.
I'll never forget that first year in second grade. I had a teacher, bless her heart, named Miss Rosen, who did not believe that black kids should learn anything.
Whoa.
So my
that's a
first
conflict of
second
interest.
grade year,
Your teacher feels this
Straight
way?
up, like
I'll never forget her because she just did not like us at all. So I had to clean cubbies my first year.
Dang.
I didn't learn anything.
You didn't learn
I
anything
didn't
in
learn
second
anything.
grade.
Mm-mm.
So what? So she just separated you from the group?
Yeah. While everyone's out at recess, I had to go clean the cubbies and wash the floor. Oh yeah,
that's crazy.
didn't just serve it.
And
Yeah.
the school
Yo.
administration's not doing anything about this?
They took her side up until, and this is why I love my mother, told my mom the story. Next day, the worst thing you want to do is piss off a black mother.
Facts.
So she rolled up, met with the METCO director at that time, who also sided with the
Really?
teacher, and said,
What is there to side with? I don't understand. Like,
they're
why?
learning.
What's the
They're valuable
justification?
skills.
because I'm a young little girl, right? I am entering this new program. Like, what would I know? Jesus, what would I know about injustice? You know, and I'm like, I know my feelings. So my mom called out the METCO director and that particular teacher. Basically, I got tired of that particular teacher telling me what my value was. So I angrily pushed a chair across the room because I'm like, you know, I know what my value is.
Right.
And she took that as me being an angry black girl. So what happened was they put me in special education because of that one incident.
Because you pushed a chair.
Because I pushed a chair.
That's crazy.
And I'm
What?
a
This is
lover, not
insane.
a fighter, right? So my thing is, my mother said, well, you must have done something.
That's
That's
usually-
usually.
That's how it be.
I
That's
did
how it be.
something. Though. That's the
That's how it
difference.
be. That's how
I
it be.
did
Okay.
something, but this is
So
crazy.
no, this is my mom speaking
That's
to
how
the
it be.
school. Like, you all must have done
Right.
something for her to get this
Right.
angry because she's a happy child when she's at
At
home,
home. Right.
So my mother, you know, was on the METCO director at that time every day, every month, from quarter to quarter because we were on a quarter system. And I ended up graduating from second grade and moving on throughout my entire education. But that, you know, up until basically 8th grade, I was a kid that was picked on. I was bullied. Everyone took my food, like all those kind of things. But I still stayed humble because I knew being the tallest girl in school would have repercussions, right?
Facts. Yeah,
I excelled academically because I loved the books. But socially was the hardest experiment in the METCO program because no one teaches you that,
Right.
Yeah.
right? And just all the new things, right? The freedom that, you know, my white friends could have because they have these $1.2 million homes, and I'm like, I'm in Roxbury, like I don't.
Right.
Mind you, they're 5 minutes away. They don't got to take
Yeah,
an
they
hour
ain't got,
travel.
you know.
Facts.
But I was very fortunate. My host family, I consider them like a very Woodstock type. Like her parents smoke weed and everything else, but they just had they were really down for civil rights, so they were really on my side and they were very protective while I was out in the suburbs. But when I got to high school, my life completely changed because now I went from the Lincoln school system to Lincoln Sudbury, and these are two towns that have so much wealth, but they fight each other. And then here's a whole bunch of black and brown kids coming to
Being
the
thrown into the
suburbs.
mix, right.
So, yeah, it was, ninth grade was rough. I ended up getting off special education because, again, I excelled academically. Like, you couldn't touch me on my grades.
They never questioned like why is she still here? She's excelling so much in the class.
Nope.
It's crazy.
Nope.
Why stay in the METCO program for that long then? If you didn't feel like,
Because,
unless it was benefiting you more than it was harming you.
Well, it's interesting because my mother asked me every year, like, do you really want to do this?
Mhm.
And I come from a family where we walk our talk.
For sure.
Right? Unless it's really going to physically cause me harm or literally put my life in jeopardy. If it's just people's words, I can work through that. Right? If I got
Right.
a certain system in place. So I knew it was going to be harder as I got through the grades, but I could hide in the books because that's where the separation was.
Mhm.
Is that there
See.
were a few Black kids that really did well academically and everyone else was doing great socially. So I could hide in the books.
Mhm.
It was when I got to high school that everything changed because I ended up learning very quickly about the chain of command from senior to freshman.
We all do.
And
Listen real quick.
That's the
but
real
the thing
growing
is,
pains
I'm
right
still
there.
the tallest girl out of it. Like,
the entire
Right.
school.
right? So I got hazed by the METCO seniors. I never forget.
We're not on the same team.
No cap. The METCO scene
There's only
is
so
crazy.
much of us though. Like what?
It was like,
it didn't even matter. It didn't even matter
Wow.
because I didn't. No one told me that I couldn't sit in the back of the bus, which is so interesting considering Rosa Parks.
Yeah.
So seniors, like
Ooh, yeah.
the pecking order is freshmen, junior, senior, all that stuff. So I went to the back of the bus because that was where the most legroom was.
Makes sense.
For sure.
But this particular gentleman, and I'm just gonna call him a gentleman, that was his seat. I didn't know that because it's
Right.
freshman
Sign
year.
sheets,
You know that
right.
back seat of the bus,
Right.
like on the left side, where it's like one person can
that
only
was
sit on
my
it.
seat.
That was the
That was
seat.
my
That's,
seat.
all right. That's
That's the seat. That's the
You might
prestigious
have-
seat.
You might have brought it on yourself.
That's
That's
a prestigious seat.
I remember my
Well,
first
here's
week
the
of high
thing.
school.
Here's the
Go
thing.
ahead.
My thing is, if I'd sat in the front,
Mhm.
I'd have to take up a whole seat,
Right.
which
Mhm.
meant there was gonna be a freshman that would be standing up on the bus, and you can't do that legally at
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
time. So yeah, I sat at the back of the bus, and this gentleman, called me the B word and everything except godly,
Mm.
and I was like, all right. Well, I went back home, told my dad the next day. 3 uncles, all my brothers,
Took care of that.
couple of aunties,
Hey,
few nephews.
Oh, the whole family.
Oh, wow.
Showed up at the bus stop with the gentleman. All I know is
He's a senior.
I got
too.
that
That's
seat,
crazy.
Yeah.
at least for the year.
That's all you needed to know.
Facts.
But I was literally, instead of that gentleman bullying me, he used everyone else.
To do it.
Mm.
Right. So I'll never forget, it must have been 2 degrees outside, and we're going up Trapello Road, heading to Sudbury.
Mhm.
And the seniors decided to put down every single window on the bus. And this is a hour ride
Facts.
because of
Dang.
where I sat.
That's not gonna hurt them too, though.
Listen, I'm so close with my class. Like we joke about it now, but we all made sacrifices because, like, okay, they're only gonna be here for a couple of months.
Facts.
We're gonna be here for the next 3.5 years.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
we can work it out.
Wow.
But when I got into high school, I really excelled socially because I started my own stuff. So I started a student-led organization called Universal Rhythm, which was literally taking all the METCO kids
Mhm.
and using talent shows as a way to convey their lived experiences.
Mhm.
That's fire.
Right. So what made it amazing was I was the only student being able to negotiate with the principal to take over a class period of the week. No one had ever done that.
That's fire.
To do this talent show.
I know they appreciated that.
Trailblazing.
They was like, all right, maybe
They're
she's
not
all
used
right.
trailblazing.
Maybe she's not my fault.
So at that point, it was 1,200. The student population was 1,200 students, and we had a black box theater,
Mhm.
and it was 100-seat theater, but everyone's trying to jam pack
Yeah.
into this theater to see this talent show.
And it's, again, all students, not just METCO students.
all students.
So then I have a question about that, right?
Yeah,
Socially, did you ever feel like you had to code switch?
every day.
Mm.
Every day. You
Yeah.
kidding?
Because the conversation that we've had before that we don't.
Is
we kinda
code
go back
switching
and
a
forth about,
skill,
is it-
or are
or-
you?
no, is it
it's a skill.
disingenuous?
It's a
Is
skill
it-
because there were some.
Or are you hurting yourself because you're not truly, that's kind of the argument. It's like,
I'll
are
say
you being
this.
disingenuous to yourself?
Nope. It's exhausting.
Yeah,
Let me be
sure.
very clear.
Mhm.
But, and I don't know if I can curse here, but
Oh, it's bad for the community.
Okay, I was about to say. Like,
I
We're
remember
only upping it up for you.
I sat on a panel a couple years ago and I was interviewed by a lovely human being, Theo Tyson, and they had asked me this question about, have you been able to utilize your METCO experience into your adulthood? And I'm like, I absolutely know how to deal with white people shit now
For sure.
Yeah.
because of the amount of code switching.
Mhm.
Mhm.
I've had to be in a place of observation more than engagement to then know how I need to move. Almost to a point of being like Neo, like seeing the future
Yeah.
because
Like, I
the
know how y'all be
behavior
I
repeats
know what this
itself
is.
over
Yep.
and over again.
And it just changes. It
Yeah,
just
it looks
Yeah.
different
It
generation to generation, but the
it looks
essence
different in
of
a
it is the
corporate
same.
office,
Yeah.
but it's all the same.
Yeah, and so that part of being a METCO student, that level of code switching, allowed me in my adulthood to navigate a lot easier.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Right? Like, I don't need to give 100% an environment like that anymore because it hasn't changed since I was in high school. It's how do I utilize people and systems because those systems haven't changed either.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
In some cases, they're a little bit more broken, which I find to be more opportunistic. But the navigation of using that code switching skill has allowed me to navigate to do things that I want to do
Mhm.
because I've had to do it on my own anyway.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I operate from that lens because I love the books. I all my teachers love me and all the fun stuff, but that navigation piece and knowing when to let your representative show up versus your whole self is because of that METCO experience.
I heard.
So
Makes sense.
It seems like it's a little bit of both. You know what I mean?
It's how you want to.
It's how you use it. Yeah.
Yeah, if you felt like, and there's some METCO alumni that I know, they're just like, I don't ever want to turn back to Massachusetts. You can have that. Like, I've had that extreme, and then there's the others who just stay quiet under the radar because they just didn't want to be seen.
Yeah.
Right.
So it's unfortunate that you can't be your authentic self 100% of the time, but that's just
that
that's the
wasn't even a
circumstance.
term then.
That's just
Yeah,
the
facts.
circumstances of the situation. You kind of set yourself up for, I don't want to say failure, but you make it harder for yourself to not be able to adapt to these environments because that's America. You know what I mean? It's
Yes.
majority white. So for you to not be able to have the skills to, operate in those spaces,
Just navigate
you're
the
limiting
world.
yourself
Facts.
from what you
Yeah, I
the
mean,
opportunities.
and I use that code switching to my advantage when I was in high school.
as you should.
So
yeah.
the student-led organization that ran for 4 years. Those talent shows became a part of the student schedule for the year.
It's fire.
So that's like 4 talent shows a year.
All
Okay.
right. That's cool.
And we were allowed to curse because like it's our lived experience.
Right.
They was really rocking with that one. They was like, okay.
So and I was in drama class and the drama club. So utilizing my teachers to help me, create a play out of that, like all the creative things because I was around so many creative METCO students, but they were just shadowed because of the color of their skin. And so I wanted to create the moment for them. But Universal Rhythm ran like a business. Like you had to apply for it.
Yeah.
I made a whole application. You had to have a certain GPA. And if you fell below that GPA, guess what? I'm connecting you with some teachers after school who have
That's fire.
volunteered their
That's
time.
amazing.
Right. And then I ran our high school radio station, which was a rock
dope.
and roll radio station. But at that time, I'm like, yeah, there's no one listening to this rock and roll station. So I worked with the facilities manager
Mhm.
to deconstruct that radio station to rebuild it up and make it a urban radio station format. And so at that time I was writing to the record labels. I was calling the record labels. The product was starting to be sent to me.
Yeah.
You're how old
Did
at
you-
this point?
This
I was
high
saying,
school.
like, in high school. That's,
you
I'm just
have-
focused on passing my classes. I'm out here
Right,
trying to help
right.
everybody
No, I
else.
did all
Like,
that.
that's
I mean-
amazing.
Did you have like a point of reference to be
Like, how
doing
did
all the
you-
things that you was
Yeah,
doing? You just
yeah.
learning it on the fly.
So I mean, I grew up in a beautiful house where music was everywhere.
Mhm.
My father owned and operated and inherited a wallpapering and painting company from his father. So entrepreneurship was always in the house,
there.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
right? I just couldn't figure out what my lane was yet.
Right.
And so when I got to high school, I just took interest in, I'm really great at mobilizing people. Like folks will listen to me, one, because I'm the tallest thing in the room, but two, because of that, I don't enforce my presence like that. Either you feel it or you don't.
Right.
And most of the times people gravitated towards go talk to Kat, right? So I was that person. Also at that time with the radio station, Hot 97 had just come to Boston. WLD had just faded. And there was a gentleman named Charles Tolbert. He went by the radio name Chuck Dog. He was from Detroit. They were doing a celebrity basketball game with Northeastern, and a friend of mine were like, yo, let's just go. Let's go lie our way into this game.
Word. That's the way.
Because you can do that as a kid. You can do it a lot as a kid.
No cap.
So we said, hey, we're here representing the Blue Hill Boys and Girls Club, writing, a story for our newsletter. Can we get in? And they let us in.
That's dope.
Okay.
Sometimes
And
you gotta
that's
see
how
what
I
they-
met Chuck. And Chuck just happened to work at the radio station. And it wasn't an internship at that time, but I would definitely say it was an apprenticeship.
Right.
Word.
So he took me in and showed me how a radio station worked. And then I applied that at my high school radio
That
station.
makes sense.
Right.
And this is the time where 106 in Park is amazing.
Yeah.
So I
Before
was,
Bow Wow got there.
yeah, that part.
I know that hurt you. That's his
I can't with you. So I took all the English classes I learned in high school. I wrote my first sponsorship letters with my English teachers, and I got free product. I got my first set of techniques for the radio station,
Wow.
and we did our own Freestyle Friday in the booth.
Oh, that's fire.
every
That-
Friday.
That is incredible.
But I
With the
literally-
students?
With the students.
So, like I said, see, I'm only learning more, but like I said in the beginning, it really does feel like everything that's, that's happening in your adolescence
Yeah.
is kind of just like leading the way
Yes.
for the work that you're going to be doing in the future. And if I'm correct, did you went to school at Temple University, but
Surely did.
you specialized in
I'll tell
event
you the
management?
I'll tell you the story. So when I graduated from high school, Drumline had just come out.
Okay.
And I was like,
Classic.
I want to go to HBCU. That was just on my list. I went through 2 tours of HBCUs. So if you can imagine, 16 schools each round, 2 weeks, up to 80 students from Boston. Okay. Very interesting tour.
Yeah.
And I landed on my first year and a half out of high school when I graduated. I went to an HBCU first before I went to Temple.
Okay.
Because I wanted culture.
Mhm.
I had lost it.
Yeah,
almost-
METCO. Yeah, fact. I feel you.
I did want to ask, while you were, in the METCO program,
Mhm.
what was your connection like to the Boston community? You're there on the weekends, you're there later, but like, did you feel like you were losing some of that?
No,
Or
I
you-
mean, the only traumatic thing I ever had was on Humboldt, my bus was going down the street, and there was a couple of unfortunate Black kids that literally rocked our bus, and they shattered every window.
Yeah.
And there's a friend of mine who I love so much. His name was Hakeem. He ended up getting a piece of glass in his eye. But they didn't want us in the neighborhood. And that still didn't matter to me because I was a member at the Roxbury YMCA. I was a member at the Blue Hill Boys and Girls Club. I went to Mattapan Music like every week. I went to Strawberries. Like I found myself in the culture.
Still very much connected.
Yeah, and all my family's here, and my family has a long history in Boston, which I don't necessarily talk about because I like to earn my keep. But my family's very union based, and so everyone has a trade. So, and I have I come from a family of many pastors, so always involved somewhere.
Yeah.
Someone remembers me when I was little from something. But I took it in where I knew that the arts lane, the creativity lane was where I wanted to be because I could be myself in that, from that perspective. But I made the choice coming out of high school that I knew I wanted to go to HBCU first. I wanted the culture. I wanted the drumline experience. I'm like, I always appreciated marching bands.
Right.
We don't have that up here.
I was gonna say that's one thing that we're lacking. It's
for
crazy.
sure.
It's crazy. It's nasty work.
I heard all those things.
Maybe we could start one.
Yeah. I mean,
What instrument
not?
do you play?
I didn't say an answer. I
He's
said
gonna play the drums,
HBCU.
bro.
Why
play the
can't we have an
drums. I was like,
HBCU
wait,
here?
what?
I
That's
can't with
facts.
y'all.
That's all I'm
I
saying.
mean, RCC.
Yeah, I mean,
Technically, yeah.
they are considered HBCU.
I didn't know that.
Locked
actually.
in.
I didn't know that.
They
That
are
makes
considered
sense.
HBCU. So
Did it live up to the drumline experience?
It did. It did. I had so much fun in my first year and a half. I surely did. It was the first time that I'd ever seen the magnificence of what Black people are capable of doing.
That's amazing.
To see, Black nurses, occupational therapists, entrepreneurs, NASCAR drivers, I just never had that. I'm like, I have a Black family, but this was something different.
Yeah.
To see halftime, to see Black tailgating is a lot different than white tailgating.
Sure.
To meet Louis Farrakhan, to meet Maya Angelou, to meet, this is gonna date me, but when I got to my HBCU, my first major was mass communications. I wanted to do radio because of high school.
Right.
But because I learned all those skills then, I got bored at my HBCU because the things they were teaching me, I'm like,
things you already did in high school.
I'm like,
I could teach the class.
Right. I'm like, it's me.
But I was very fortunate to have a professor, Bill Franklin, rest his soul. He taught me how to talk on the mic. He would call out my Boston accent like no one's business, and I hated it. But I learned
what type of Boston
how to,
accent did you? You didn't have like the nasty, Southie accents,
no, but the uhs and just he would call me on this mic, and it would embarrass me. But I learned how to appreciate the mic. But being there for the year and a half, this is when the HBCU college tours would come through. So this is when Chris Brown's first coming out. This is when Sierra's first coming out.
Yeah.
Goodies.
I found
good years.
I know.
I found my way to the intramural sports and recreation department. I talked myself into a job. I ran all their campus activities, and I did an event called Bring the Noise, Bring the Funk, Campus Olympics. So it was bringing together all the student clubs to friendly compete with like childhood activities. So it's like egg and spoon, potato sack race, like whatever it is. And that was like 25 student clubs. So seeing all these Black people who knew me on campus come to my events, I was like, all right, I want to do this.
Right.
I just don't know what this is. Then I worked on a radio show called The Midnight Storm. That was like the late night booty hour because
you taking phone calls.
Midnight Storm.
Yo, it's DJ Cat.
I was smart. I sat in the booth to help the on-air personalities. And so there was a gentleman named Corey Ruffin. He was like the heavy D of the campus. Everyone loved this dude. The ladies loved this dude. And then they had DJ Wade. And so they were the voices of the campus. I was just making sure the music was flowing. That was my role.
Okay.
I didn't want to be on the mic.
Yeah.
Feel you.
I'm good.
Still a very important role to run the
Yeah, in
odds.
fact, the music is the key. though.
It is very
You know what I'm
key.
saying?
Very key. But it was the only part of the entire college format that wasn't. So that format at that school was jazz. So then you have an open R&B hip hop format, which was the only time of the night.
Oh, so it's probably super popular too.
Ooh, yes, it was.
I was about to say, it was like,
When you say you was
getting our
responsible
fix.
for the music, were you more so playing like a regional role where it's like, yo, I'm introducing them to music that people are listening to in Boston and kind of putting them on?
It was everything.
Got you.
It was. I mean, I had to learn trap music. I didn't
And
learn
at
it
that
all.
time, that's
That's
what's
what
coming up.
I don't know what you're showing them from Boston because everything is in the South at this
that
time.
it
Like
was
Jeezy,
it was
T.I.
like Trillville. It was like the Fanatics. I mean, it was all the things that were anything I'd ever experienced being from Boston. I grew up in a R&B, funk, disco family. So to hear this, I'm like, what is this sound? It's amazing.
Right.
But the lyrics, I'm like, ooh, this is nasty. I'm not sure I could play this up tap, but I would send some stuff to my mother and she was like, keep sending that, some good stuff. Okay.
That's fine.
Mom's got an ear.
Yeah. So I mean that first year was amazing. But I got bored so fast.
Really? Why is that?
Because academically I excelled. I was like, 4.9 GPA.
So what's the issue? Just keep keep
No.
going with the 4.9 and
I feel
graduate
it's
with it,
tough.
right?
No,
It's tough.
No.
When you get that sense of like,
I need
all right,
more.
where am I gonna go from
yeah,
here?
Yeah.
It's tough to stick around, no cap,
And plus,
especially academically.
I had a professor, bless her heart, similar to Miss Rosen. She did not like Yankees. She did not like Northerners. So she made me
crazy.
teach my first semester. I had to teach English class to my peers.
As a freshman?
Dang,
Yeah, that was the hazing I got from her.
that's crazy.
Huh.
And
You
then
were teachers.
So she's just in the room, just
she's just like, here you go. You're gonna go teach this. And
do
I'm
my
just-
job
Dang.
for free.
And part of the reason why she did that, one, to make me the example, but she had flunked every paper, and I would take it to another professor
Mhm.
who gave me the A.
Yeah.
So that rubbed her the wrong way, and I'm like, there's a reason that has nothing to do with me academically. You
Right.
just don't like.
I've never even
Northerners.
tried something like
Yeah, working
that.
Nah. It'd
When
be like that
you-
for real though. No
Yeah,
cap.
like,
some
I-
professors really just be on bags. Like they just
I learned
don't.
really quickly
Yeah.
again, when you observe, you learn the systems of schools.
Right.
Right. So I'm like, all right, I know I can go get my printing for free. I
Right.
know where all the seniors hang out. And, after a certain hour, I know where the fraternity. Like, I watched a lot to then navigate where I needed to go.
Yeah.
So I end up going back to my high school guidance counselor and saying, I need to transfer somewhere,
Hmm.
but I don't want to go home. And he's like, consider Temple,
And where's Temple located?
Philly.
Oh.
So that's how I got to Philly. And then I changed my major to tourism and hospitality management and never worked a day in hotels. But I knew events is what I wanted to do.
Okay,
Sure.
so it's in that area.
And Philly is the most perfect place at that point where I can earn an events degree
Mhm.
because it's festival
Yeah.
capital.
Right.
Right.
And at that time, the Roots Picnic had just started.
Yep.
Exactly.
Jill Scott was on her, she was writing on her first album. Music Soul Child had just come out at that time. Usher, I want to say 8701, maybe around that time. But all these things were happening in Philly, and I'm like,
Yeah.
I'm in the place I need to be.
Mhm.
And I threw myself in everything Philly.
Word.
So I could, you were only required to graduate with one internship. I did 7
Right.
because I was nosy as hell.
Yo,
feel you.
Casting over
Throw
at
me
you,
for
bro.
the
I can tell.
right? I met local artists. I went to a b-boy barbecue. I did an internship with the city of Philadelphia. I worked on a festival called Welcome America, which is Philadelphia's birthday festival,
Mhm.
and that at that time was 7 days of free outdoor programming. Almost a million
7
people
days?
coming to the
Week,
city.
wow.
And I was like, I want to do this.
Dang,
I want to do this. This is what I want to
That's
do.
very honorable. I would have definitely not done that. Tell you that much. I'd have been like, I'm gonna get one of those 7 days.
I'm
maybe
just trying to get
max.
through school.
No, because
Facts, right? While being in school.
I'm always curious about solving for the bigger issues, right? And culture is always the basis for me. So why not be in a city where that is part of the actual fabric of Philly?
Right.
And they put me in every single neighborhood of Philly. So I've
Dang.
seen the toughest of the tough and the richest of the richest.
How different
So-
was your experience in Philly from Boston?
Well, now I'll add to that question too. More so, like, what are the things that you noticed in Philly that you're like, okay, I could bring this back with me to
Mhm.
Boston?
Mhm.
Like, what was the differences that you've seen that's like, okay, I could bring this back?
So one of the things I learned historically at Boston and Philadelphia are actually sister cities
Yeah.
by contract. We're just the better
Interesting.
sister. I mean, excuse me, Philly's the better sister.
Yeah.
How does that work?
So culturally, in terms of the differences, both cities are, I want to say, in the original 13
Mhm.
colonies.
Mhm.
But Philadelphia just took it a step further about the celebration around that, the infrastructure, the systems, the museums,
Mhm.
the embedding, all of that into the city and state budget that they spend millions of dollars on. Like, we were nowhere near that in Boston.
Mhm.
The way that Philadelphia would promote its tourism to the rest of the world.
Yeah, facts.
They had this campaign, it's better in Philly when you sleep over.
Mhm.
Very true. Boston was just never there with the tourism piece.
Yeah.
We have duck boats. I'm messing with you.
Nope. But the one distinct difference, which is still true to this day, which is why BAMS Festival is important, is Philadelphians have a true cultural and civic pride. They are proud of where they come from.
Facts.
So when a Jill Scott says she's gonna pull up in Philly, everyone
pops up.
coming. Okay.
Yep.
When Kevin Hart, started to grow his career, when he pull up in Philly, everyone's coming.
And it's supporting.
That is not here.
Yeah.
You don't feel like there's that same pride? Of like, I'm from Boston.
No.
Y'all think so?
that's
A little
good.
bit?
No.
I mean, I feel like
I don't know. My Boston friends are prideful about.
I mean, we're getting
being from
there.
Boston.
It's a different
we're
time
getting
too,
there,
though.
but nah.
Work to
Philly-
be done?
Like, hey, you see it with like even with sports. You feel me? Like Boston sports fans are like up there, sure. Philly sports fans
Yeah.
go crazy. with it.
Philadelphia
Too
sports fans and
See?
Pittsburgh, like
Pittsburgh,
true
yeah.
diehards. Okay,
Yeah, that's where my
Boston's got
family from.
nothing on that.
I learned very early on that like there's like cultural differences when it comes to like some of the like very particular cultural aspects. Like we're talking about like the Pittsburgh Pirates. You know what I'm saying? They've been chips since they've been chips. You feel me? But they will ride or die.
They will
for
ride
them.
or die.
And I'd never seen this before. And
And-
don't get started about the Steelers. Like, you know what I mean? Like I said, my family they go crazy for the Steelers.
they will hold everyone accountable for the failure. Like it's
Facts.
not just the players. Like we're gonna hold the coach. We're gonna hold
The owners.
The owners, and I'm like,
GM,
yeah,
yeah.
we don't. It's not how it works here, right?
I don't even know the Red Sox GM. No cap.
But also the other piece which I appreciated was Philadelphia didn't hide from the arts. Like it's just everywhere.
Yeah.
And Boston at that time was just hiding. We can't do this, and we want to keep our bricks and our architecture. And I'm like, all right, whatever. So when you have art everywhere, there's a pride that comes along with that from the people because now you got tours built around that. Now you can take young kids, around different communities and talk about those murals and why that matters, right? But also, even all of that is built into all the publicity and marketing of promoting that city.
Yeah.
So Philly is an art city. There's no doubt about it.
Fact.
Boston is not even named for that.
Yeah.
And yet we have
A lot.
amazing artists,
A ton of
right?
them.
I mean, I'll even jump in and say too, like, how did you get connected to the Isabel Stewart Gardner
Oh.
Museum? Like, because to me, what certain institutions they feel inaccessible. You know what I mean?
Sure.
Like as an artist myself, like, I've had opportunities to have my work featured in the, Kennedy Institute. And to me, that was like, yo, like that was never supposed to happen. You know what I mean? Like I never had that on my, my I guess on my plate.
Right.
You know what I mean? And I look at the Gardner Museum as another place that it's like, they're on some prestigious bourgeoisie, like we're never looking for people like you.
Mhm.
So how did you get connected to that space?
Right.
They found me.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Real recognized real.
I being a METCO kid, I've learned how to build on my own. So by the time the Gardner sought me out, I was already building BAMS Fest.
Okay.
Right.
Okay.
I was already building the will of the people, connecting with the artists. But it helps that your name is in a couple of print publications. But I also chose to show up in as many rooms as possible. Even if I didn't have anything to say, like, I'm just here, just making observations.
Showing face.
Hey, you should probably connect with so-and-so.
Right. Resource brokering.
That's it. That's all.
Mhm.
Nothing else. What I will say is the Philadelphia part, all the things that I learned, all those internships, prepare me for then come back home and start my own stuff. Because I was very fortunate to work with amazing people who saw my potential, gave me opportunity, drive that opportunity, grow my own network, and be able to take those experiences back home, right? And then when I got back home, this is the first recession. And I'm like, oh,
So
I
we're
don't
in
have
08 now.
I ain't got a job, so I got to go work at Walmart over here and do whatever. And then I somehow landed at MIT first.
Interesting.
I worked at MIT first for almost 10 years. I specifically chose to work in campus activities
Okay.
because I love working with students.
Right.
One, been there, done that, know how to navigate. Temple was also another place where I learned how to do many things. I worked in the student center. I ran the movie theater. I helped with the parties. I did it all.
Right.
So I'm like, that is my lane. I love working with students because I want them to be able to navigate not just the school system, but how do you navigate a city you don't know?
Mm-hmm.
And so if I could be a hood tour guide in that respect.
Yeah.
I have an in, right?
Right.
The most smartest
But-
people in the world.
They're
but
coming from all different parts of the
all
country.
all
Not
parts
from
of the
here.
world,
really. Yeah.
But socially, they weren't there. And that's where I knew I could be helpful.
Yeah.
See.
So I worked in Campus Activities Complex for almost 8 years there. I worked for Technology Review magazine. But particularly with Campus Activities, I worked with over 500 student groups a year, producing 15,000 events. I oversaw 44 facilities
Dang.
across the campus.
Wow.
Yeah. Because I
Wow.
want more. Like,
Yeah.
give
I
it to
feel
me,
you.
right?
I feel you. Oh,
No,
no.
I'm thoroughly
I'm
impressed.
stressed just hearing it.
Never
Okay.
lived.
I'm like, yeah.
But to be able to work with student groups to help them not just look at their event for the sake of looking at the event, but the impact it can have.
Right.
So
Yeah.
going through my own process with them about, have you considered this? Have you thought about this? Do you know so-and-so in the community? You don't? Great. Let me go broker that for you, right?
Mhm.
And what that did for a lot of students was it gave them a system to work in that the school was never going to teach them,
Right.
Feel
Yeah.
that.
right? So their events were not only successful, but they got the benefit of bringing truly community in while also, bringing their peers into that work. Exhausting work, don't get me wrong.
I can imagine.
I worked the graveyard shift. So the 6
Dang.
p.m. to 2 a.m., that was my shift.
Mm-hmm.
And going to night school at that time.
Sleep schedule doesn't sound like it's
Surely-
anywhere to be found.
Surely was not. But that was also the time I was building BAMS Fest. It
I was
started
gonna
at
ask,
MIT.
yeah,
Yeah, we talked
where
about
does this
that.
idea of BAMS Fest come from, and why did you feel like there was a need for a festival rooted for Boston arts and music that you started?
I got tired. Somehow, I think over the time, in a very unconscious way, I was surrounded by a lot of creative people. Just the way I was in my life. And I was hearing all this complaining about Boston has nothing to offer. I'm getting ready to leave. I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, well, we can do all the complaining or we can do something about it.
Mm,
And I'm
Okay.
just going to do something about it because that's just in my DNA.
yeah.
For sure.
So I was working at MIT one night and a gentleman by the name of Justin Springer, shout out to him.
Yeah, it's like God. We know Justin.
Yeah.
You know
Rhythm and
Justin?
Rap.
How do I know Justin?
Rhythm and raps.
Oh, that.
Yeah, Justin
Yeah,
Springer.
Justin,
yes.
bro.
Okay,
Yes.
that's my
God.
fault. That's amazing.
So he
Small world.
I was like, no, Justin got no problem. I was like, oh, no,
Shout out to
no. I was
Justin.
like, let's put some respect. That's why I got Justin. We rock with Justin. Yeah, I mean,
Ah.
shout out Justin.
We ended up meeting up somehow because I was starting to seed in community like, hey, I'm going to build this thing, build this festival. And everyone's just like, oh, yeah, we've heard that before. People have always said they were going to do that. I'm like,
Yeah.
all right, maybe y'all just don't know me, even though I'm from here.
Right.
Cool.
Y'all, yeah.
I don't know.
So, like, maybe
What's,
they
what's,
just-
what's
like,
that
maybe they
shit?
just don't know.
I wasn't familiar with your game.
So Justin came to my job. It had to be like 8 o'clock at night, and he brought Latrell James.
Oh wow.
And
Charles been in this game for a long
yes,
time.
he
Yeah, for
has.
sure.
Yes, he has. And I told Latrell, I'm like, I believe in you. I want to support you. I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm believing you enough
Yeah.
that I'm going to spend my personal dollars to create something
Right.
for you to benefit from.
Mhm.
Okay. He said, all right, cool, whatever. I'm like,
Right.
all right, bet. So
Yeah, Latrell chill. Like,
I didn't know
um,
Latrell was like
this is
the
when he-
catalyst
this is
for
when he had a
BAMS
fade.
Fest. This is crazy.
He before the locks.
And I didn't know the rest of his family. I just Justin brought him to
Mhm.
me, and I trusted Justin. I also met Valerie Stevens at that time, who's this amazing elder of our community. Obehi Janice, who's now out in New York, is an amazing script writer and comedian. This is what was happening in Boston at the time.
Yeah.
And so I ended up partnering with Fenway Alliance. They did their opening door ceremony. I featured Valerie Stevens that year, 2015.
Why does that name sound familiar?
If you all haven't heard of the
I
show,
think
you need to.
was she one of the ladies that we did show and tell with?
Maybe.
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah,
low
that-
I
key.
think so.
Valerie's the OG.
She's a performer, right?
yes, she
Yeah,
is.
I think so.
I think the
Yeah.
name sounded very familiar.
And
Gotta run back
then
the tape.
we
Yeah, you gotta
partnered
run
with
back,
Emerson College. They did a series called Black Box Sound. So we were their first musical curator organization. So we did a 3-year partnership with them. And Latrell was the first artist
That's fire.
that we featured.
I did not know this.
Yep.
History.
This
Uh,
is
yeah,
Yeah, you learned it.
Yeah,
I
right.
like a game.
So I invested $22,000 of my personal money to support 4 artists and the organization to start.
22,000.
Yeah,
So she's putting her money where her mouth is too.
I did.
So
I bet on me.
While everybody else is complaining, everybody else is buying their plane tickets, and you're finding the hole in the market
I am.
that exists here because again, there's no limited supply of artistry that exists
sure.
in Boston.
There's not, but what I did find that's still true to this day is we still aren't proud of where we're from. I'm not sure how to change that, but the next couple of years, so this is around like 2014, 2015. So 2015 is when the original founding of BAMS Fest started. I wrote how the designation came about was I wrote a business plan while I was in night school at MIT, going to Simmons. And I wrote that business plan in an elective class. I wasn't thinking anything of it. But my professor at the time made all the students do a pitch competition.
Okay.
And I won that competition.
Right.
Okay?
I mean, it's
So
a good idea.
this just started off as a school project,
It was a
basically.
school project.
That's
I knew I
fine.
wanted to do something great, and I was like BAMS Fest because I was trying to play on words. I wanted something to stick. I knew what the logo was gonna be. I needed to find the visionary for that. And so it was a concept that ended up turning into a 501c3. I literally took that business plan and went straight to City Hall. I'm like, so I want to do this thing. They're like, that would never happen. It's like, okay, I'll be back in a couple of years.
Yeah. See, I feel like this keeps happening where you're running into these people and they're just like, that sounds great. No, I don't see it happening. And you're just like, well, I guess I'm gonna have to see it through anyway. You feel me? I guess I'm gonna have to make sure that you know that this is possible.
What
right?
other programs and festivals like existed at that time?
Caribbean Festival.
Caribbean
the
Festival.
Caribbean Festival's huge.
You got a
Caribbean
Boston
Festival.
Calling?
Boston Calling wasn't.
It was there, but it wasn't like at least from what I know of Boston Calling, that's not for the community.
That was
like,
not for
even
the
back because I went to Boston Calling when I was in high school, like the first time, but it wasn't enjoyable.
I mean, at that
wasn't an
point,
enjoyable
the
experience.
inspirations were
It was at City Hall.
Essence Festival, Newport,
Newport Jazz Fest?
Newport Jazz Festival.
Gotcha. Okay.
The New Orleans Heritage and Blues Festival. The Roots Picnic. That again,
Right.
it was
Time in
evolving
Philly,
at that
yeah.
time.
Yeah.
And there was like a handful of R&B festivals that were like California, and then Glastonbury Festival, which is like Europe. There was different elements logistically, culturally, aesthetically, programmatically that I was paying attention to. And I'm like, how do I do that in my city that is so small, doesn't have the infrastructure, wasn't designed on a grid, like all the things that every other major city knew not to mess up on.
Right.
We are the mistake, right?
Mm-hmm.
I kept that in mind, coupled with my Philadelphia experience. And I just made a decision that, in Boston, you have to show proofs of concept of this thing you want to happen. So all the elements of what BAMS Festival is what I was testing out the first 3 years.
Yeah.
So we did 12 events every year for the first 3 years of BAMS
So
Fest.
smaller events that kind of give you an idea of.
Absolutely. And I've never had to pay for a follower. Like it's the Boston grapevine that I rely on. It's tell an auntie that tells 3 other aunties that goes to the church down the street that's connected to your mama, whatever.
Yeah.
There you go.
I rely on
all
that
the different
grapevine.
seeds. Yep.
Yeah. And just like hearing from folks, hey, if this thing happened, what would you want that to feel like?
Right.
Right. And I would take those experiences and really try to dream up what is the first couple of years the festival need to be for it to be cemented as a new tradition that pays homage to all the people and the shoulders I stand on, but becomes a staple in the community about what we could do and could become as a city. So it was obviously, it's got to be hyper-local, lineup with a couple of headliners. All right, cool. That's part of the formula. We have to be on grass. We cannot be on cement. Why is that? Because I'm thinking about children. I'm thinking about if folks want to just claim their patch of grass. They got that. It's hard to do on brick. But also from a very spiritual and ancestral lens, when you center yourself on ground, on grass, you actually reset the entire body.
Right.
Oh, so now we're
Grounding.
Grounding.
We're thinking even bigger. Okay.
Yeah.
Because one of the questions I was gonna ask, why was it important to have it at Franklin Park?
Oh, there's so much history there. And for me, the festival itself, I stand on the shoulders of a particular woman, Elma Lewis, who had already done a lot of the work, I would say. So you're talking a woman who came from another country, was considered the unofficial mayor of Boston, did it her way, started an outdoor concert series, founded a museum, founded a school, became a fellow of the MacArthur Foundation, which is the highest prestigious fellowship you can ever have, graduated from Emerson College, and did everything on her own terms. Absolutely, I'm standing on those shoulders.
Yeah.
Okay. She specifically, particularly at Playstead Field, but more so Franklin Park, there's a place that used to exist called the Overlook Tower that burned down in the 1940s. Fast forward a couple of years, Elma Lewis goes to that place with her community and turns that tower into a makeshift outdoor amphitheater. So while Questlove was doing the Summer of Soul, we already had that in the 1960s because of Elma Lewis.
Okay.
And that amphitheater was not only for music. Jesse Jackson came by and did his protest. Malcolm X and his entire family,
The more you know.
came by.
Crazy.
Like, that was an epicenter for, organizing, plot planning, strategizing, and imagination. So to be adjacent to that is paying homage to be able for me to even do this work.
Yeah.
Right? Which is why I chose specifically Franklin Park. I looked at other spaces, but this, from a community standpoint, made the most sense because most of the hood knows of Franklin Park.
Sure do.
But no one was paying attention to that park for a very long time. Right? So I stand on those shoulders for that reason and why I'm at Franklin Park specifically. And those 3 or 4 artists we started with in 2015, we're almost close to 1,000 now. And that's just by referral.
Right.
There's a couple of things I always look for in artists. Most may never agree with it, but it matters because if you want to compete in the world, if you don't have these things, you're going to have a very short life of a career no matter what your industry.
So look into that
sustainability.
camera and tell the artists that are
What are we
watching
looking
this
for?
who are aspiring
What are we
to
looking
be
for?
on that BAMS
Here's what
Fest
I'll say.
stage.
Not everyone is...
Because that artist selection process can't be easy.
No, it's not. I will say this. There are people that will never make it to our festival, ever. It's not because they weren't trying, just because they may actually not need us. They think they do, but they actually may not need us as a platform. There are bigger platforms they deserve to be on, right? We are very hyper local, so they actually need to be at a bigger festival than ours. It's great to come through BAMS Festival, but there are certain artists like, you really don't need us. But cool. So
You don't think there's a space for that to be mutually beneficial?
could be if the egos were suppressed.
Gotcha.
So that's kind of the issue that you run into when. So it's
I see what you're saying now.
okay.
Yeah.
So
that makes
it's,
sense.
It's a thing.
Right.
And by no means, I'm not a talent manager. I just know what this has to do 10 years from now.
yeah.
So there are going to be artists that just don't fit what the story needs to be. Doesn't mean I won't support them. It just may not be the festival itself. It might be some other things. So character is very, very important. Going back to Martin Luther King, the content of your character says a lot about you.
And this is before they even meet with you. This is
Yes.
something you have to see
Yes.
the groundwork laid
It's
out.
not just the music. It's not just the art. I'm looking at how you engage, how you talk, how you interview. I'm looking at everything.
Yeah.
Okay.
You might have a post from 2 years. I'm looking at that too.
Oh, jeez. Start cleansing your social media right now.
I look at that because how you show up for work is also how you're going to show up in community. It's how you're going to show up for your fans. And if there's any inconsistency, I may not look at you right away. So
And it may reflect poorly on
yeah,
the brand sus as well.
I'm pouring all of my resources into this. I
Yeah.
pour my life into this, right? There's things I have to sacrifice on the back end to make sure that everyone else is taken care of.
For sure.
So I have to make sure this is a good fit,
For sure.
right? So character is very, very important. Their ability to be creative and not just the art itself. Being collaborative in your creativity, thinking outside the box with your art. How you work across industries. I look at all those things. If you're only stuck in the one thing, you're not thinking beyond your craft. because that's not what's going to sustain you.
I agree.
What does
That's
that look
facts.
like to you?
That's true.
I pick on Latrell all the time. Latrell's probably the best case because he started off with us. I mean, he was already doing this, but he started off as a performer, but he's a producer, he's a writer. He teaches, or he talks with young people. He's been on tour. He's been at conferences. Like, he's doing the work so that him being a content expert allows him to go across any industry.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And we preach that message a lot. It's not enough to just be an artist or a performer. You know what I mean? You can't even survive in with those skills if you're really trying to even be full time, unless you're an exception, obviously. But it's those other skills that are going to allow you to create value for yourself in other spaces.
For sure.
Whether that's engineering, producing.
Especially when you're coming from an area like Boston where, like you said, like coming up, it's always felt like so exclusive. The city is almost like suppressing in a way like the voice of artists. You know what I mean? Not necessarily not supporting it in whatever capacity that they can, but then with the limitations, with the regulations, not necessarily like celebrating it fully. I mean, it's a lot harder. Sure.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, again, this is specific for Boston, right? If we were somewhere else, these qualities would change.
Right. Okay.
And the other thing is about community, right? The thing that I love about our city is we are a town with big city dreams.
Yep.
And that grapevine of your connection that's now 1-to-1, not 1-to-3. If you're not deeply engaged beyond what you do in the studio or wherever, you're missing out on a whole bunch of other things that could be happening for you.
Great.
Yeah.
Right? We're an education capital. We're a hospital capital. We're a tech capital, supposedly. We have all these other ways in which you can build community. And so if you are choosing not to do that, you may not be ready for BAMS Festival, because guess what's showing up? Guess who is showing up?
Right.
Community. Yeah.
That's a choice.
And they will call you out, and you got.
Where you been? Yeah, I hear that.
I ain't never heard of this dude.
Like, listen,
Internet popping. There's a big
facts.
difference. There's a big difference.
Okay.
Yes. So those particular things make a BAMS Fest artist. And if one is missing, I don't look at you. If two are missing, you can forget it. If you don't have it at all, I love you, but the festival platform is not for you. Now, there are artists that I will watch for 1 or 2, sometimes 3 years. And they apply every year. And I'm like, you're not ready. What do you mean I'm not ready? I'm like, yeah, you're missing this thing over here.
Yeah.
And I'll provide suggestions. You know, they don't have to take it. Some do. But I'm looking at all of that because I have to think about when you hit this stage, national press is going to be looking at you. Are you a good representative for the city of Boston, the Commonwealth of Massachusetts? Are you a representative for your industry that you're in? Can you talk about the landscape of Boston, what is going on, and what your vision is for yourself beyond this year? I look at all of that. And there's a lot of folks who are not ready to have that conversation.
Yeah.
Even with all the talking points, if you're not comfortable in your own skin, and it will show, you're not ready for the festival.
And that's not a diss. It doesn't even sound like any of this is a diss. It's just like, you're just not ready for it. You know what I mean?
Ready for it.
You could act like you're ready for $1 million tomorrow, but if I give you $1 million, you don't know what you're going to do with it.
Right.
You're going to misuse that. And I feel like it seems like the decision-making goes both ways, that it is in the interest of the artist. Like, we're not saying no for good.
Right.
That just maybe a couple years removed. Some work needs to be done. But at the same time, you also have to, protect your brand. Because even though it's a local festival, you don't want people to treat it like it's local. Because you know what happens when it's like, oh, it's just...
I think it comes down to just cohesive integrity.
It is.
You know,
that's what it really is.
Very, very important because...
cohesive integrity.
And preparing them for the larger stages, you know what I mean? When they do have to work with... I don't know, other groups, other festivals, that's the expectation too. That there's a level of professionalism.
It's almost like our festival, and I've come to experience this, feels almost like a teaching experience, right? In the sense of you can make certain mistakes, but you can't make these mistakes if you're going to go over here.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I have to be able to judge and understand and know if you can handle that.
Right.
Because not everyone's gonna do it with love. People just gonna be like, you're done. You're out.
Sure, for sure.
Thanks.
Right.
I think it's interesting. So I actually performed at BAMS Fest. So that was in 2020.
So you passed the criterias.
Allegedly.
Okay.
But I think my the biggest experience, growing experience that I found throughout that process was that you're right. There's so much that comes with it, and I think that you have to be grounded and centered in your community in order to find success. You feel me? Again, this is a live show where you're performing with a band. You feel me? You're performing at this level where you really do have to be centered in and honed in on your art, but also making sure that you're relying upon your community in order to find that success. You can't do it by yourself.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? You just
especially
can't.
if you haven't built the reputation.
Right.
You have a lot of people that come to discover you for the first time, and they're trusting that BAMS Fest has picked and selected not even so much the best, but represents the mission and vision.
Sure.
And so that's just not everyone. I can tell you, there have been situations where artists have tried to take me out to lunch, take me out to dinner. I'm like, that is not everything.
They try to get over. They try to get through.
It's not. And also, it's just timing. We've had, when BAMS Festival kicked off in June 2018, we did a open application. We had 5,000 applications first year. And the majority of that was out of state.
Oh, wow. Do you even look at people out of state?
I do. Because I think it's always good to have a benchmark.
A little friendly.
Sure.
Right?
Level of competition.
We can't be in our head thinking we the ish. And I'm and I got a band that's about to
wipe the floor.
And we've had that a couple of times. It's oh, they're two. I'm but they moved that entire audience from your stage over here.
Right.
Let's talk about it.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Hey, listen.
So I do consider
That's
consider artists outside of the region, and that percentage is very low because the goal is to feature a local, and even more so now across the Commonwealth because everyone's had to move.
Yeah.
Nah,
So
for sure.
it's not been any easier, but those first 2 years were popping because you'd have Berkeley students come in, try to compete, and then I have to where's the diamonds in the rough? Where are the folks who don't care for this over here, but really are super talented and have all these other qualities we're looking for that we really can give them a chance? And that pool has gotten smaller since 2018.
Now
So-
let me
We
see
talk about the other side of it, right? Because you was speaking on the artist perspective, but what about the production, admin side of it, where, from the conception of it, you've been the root of BAMS Fest, right?
Still the root.
And exactly, right? And you're bringing up things I'm recognizing, you're very big on sustainability. What are things that you're looking for to eventually pass this on, maybe possibly to someone else, because you want to step back a little bit?
I do want to stop. Great observation.
A plus.
So
He's there was a couple times I was he did it. I like that.
It's somebody was locked.
So May of this year will be my 10th year.
Mm-hmm.
I'm ready to
Congrats.
go. I thank
Congrats.
you. I'm ready to retire. I'm tired.
Really?
Festival work is not for the faint of heart.
This is your baby though.
Well, the baby's a whole grown man now. For me, it's, and I'm very, very aware of founder syndrome, and I would never want to be that person. I am of the mindset that when you see a vision and you've made it work, you have to now pass that baton to the next person.
Right.
And I'm at that point of I need to find that next visionary who understands the multiple levels of engagement and the work you have to do. Because there's a lot of, this work is very individual based.
Right.
So I have to know every single individual artist, their situation, what they're trying to do, and then make sense in my head. How is this mission aligned? How can we, outside the festival program, do these other things that are important to the organization, right? That's a lot of energy that you have to give to people.
Yeah.
It's not always replenished.
Yeah, for sure.
So the sustainability of it is that we are going to embark on a new strategic plan. The goal is to find the new next executive director. I will always be a founder.
Right.
Of course.
Right. But there has to be someone who can see the next 10 years for Boston because I've done everything I said I was going to do.
Right.
And even more.
Big shout out to that. Big shout out to that.
Facts.
Seriously.
Nah, for real.
And that the team,
crazy.
the team around
10
that is like 5 strong people because I wear 157 hats.
Yep.
Yeah.
And those 5 strong people have to devise that 157 hats that I wear. and that I will be here in some advisory capacity. But how this thing moves has to be responsive to now and the future, and anticipate some things that maybe community just isn't ready for,
Right.
because they weren't ready for us anyway.
Mhm.
But there's a trust and a goodwill that what BAMS does next is going to be big for Boston. And that took a lot to get this organization in that position.
Mhm.
But my goal is to find that team that can lead it, because I have other things I have to go do now
Right,
in
right.
the
Yeah.
universe
Yeah.
Oh.
As he should.
that I've learned through this organization experience. There's a lot of advocacy work that I need to be doing to make sure that cost of living, universal health care, like all the things that artists struggle and complain about, the performance piece is now this small as an
Right.
issue.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we got to talk about just the livelihoods of people. We can't even be able to be in a space to create if we're not even securing our
Mhm.
own living.
Yeah.
Correct.
I hear that.
So the sustainability organization for the next 10 years, I'm forming that now with my board, bringing in different artists we've worked with about beyond the performance piece, how can this organization be different or be
Yeah.
responsive, and lead the charge in certain things, but knowing that it's going to now take the entire artist village to do that
For sure.
in partnership with the organization, not just us leading on our own.
Mhm.
Because it's lonely, it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is.
It's a lot of work.
And
I
I'm
know,
sure
like,
they've got
it
to
is.
they got to share that same mindset, the
They
same
do.
vision,
And
and
that's
maintain
hard.
the cornerstones of the reason that you even started BAMS Fest in the
Mhm.
first place.
And I know that going back even to some of the origins, even today, I know this is still true. Like a lot of the work is volunteer run. You feel me?
Volunteer
On the
run.
ground.
I
So-
work a full-time job, boo boo.
Yeah.
So it's like this is crazy.
Where do you have all the time in the
I
day?
don't. I don't.
I'm trying to learn.
But here's my thing.
Okay.
I do the things that I love that are purposeful.
Mm.
So even as exhausting as it is to be in a room, with the governor, to be in the room with a Fortune 500 CEO, to be in a room with an elder who has Alzheimer's but sees arts as their go-to, I'm in all of it. Because that informs the curation, that informs the vision, that
Yeah.
informs how we all should be showing up.
Mhm.
And that's a special kind of person, which I'm trying to find those unicorns now. There's going
Yeah.
to be a lot of doers,
For sure.
which is great. But the grunt work, the energy work, the personality work, the holding space for people work, you got to be from another planet
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
because it's not easy.
Definitely not. And I know like we had an interview before BAMS Fest in
Mhm.
2023. We were with Java with Jimmy. I know you talked about this concept of like succession and like figuring out what that looks like. So I just want to say like I'm really happy that like you're continuing on with that process. You know what I mean? Because I know that it can be really difficult
Yeah.
when, like you said, it's founder syndrome. But I think also like with what you've built, you know what I mean? It means more to the community, you know what I mean, when there's like folks that we trust behind it, you know what I mean, and you're someone that the community really trusts, has a lot of good faith in, you feel me, and I think that also like only elevates the way that we perceive BAMS Fest, the way that we perceive all of the projects that you're a part of, you know what I mean, not because it's important and it feels good, but it's also because it's people that we know are good people behind it.
Yeah,
know what I
and we need more soldiers like that. It's not I can't play the piano, like I can't do all the fun stuff,
Yeah.
but I can create opportunity. Like that's
Right.
my lane. And if you want to call that curation,
Mhm.
cool. I've never deemed myself as an artist, but I've always known since 13
Mhm.
that I can organize my people.
Right.
Yeah.
And if they're given choices, they'll make a different set of choices. That's all I care about. And then when I leave, I'm empty but full at the same time from that perspective. But also the model and the infrastructure of BAMS Fest has now been seen by other states and other countries.
Yep.
And maybe that can be replicated in those areas as well.
Yeah.
And the festival and the organization morphed out of a set of conditions at the time of the city, because the arts at that point, as much as our folks like to say that this current mayor is the arts mayor, it's actually Mayor Marty Walsh, because politically people held him accountable to creating a plan for the arts.
Right. So a lot of what we see now is execution,
Mhm.
but the plan was
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that was the door for BAMS Fest. Is
Who
like
was the mayor before him? Who's the one everybody loves?
Menino.
Menino.
Menino. Okay.
Yeah, but under Menino, the arts is definitely secondary,
Okay,
like
okay.
secondary,
I just had to make
tertiary.
sure I had
back
my
burner.
mayor is correct.
No,
Like,
we
rock with
one of them
Menino,
was
but
very
no-
beloved.
no,
On the
no,
art
no.
side,
No,
though,
no,
like
no.
nah,
Okay,
hell
not even.
no,
All right.
hell no. I'm sorry.
Walsh was the
Sorry.
mayor for that. Walsh was the arts mayor, so that was the door for BAMS Fest.
Okay.
At that point, everyone was giving out grants. At that point, I'm like, "Here's the let's go get this money. Let's go get this work." And we have built our community year by year, month by month, day by day, by just showing what is possible when you create a different environment for us. And now it's, how do we take all the artists that we have supported? How do we put them in the front now so that Catherine doesn't do the work by herself?
Yeah. Nah, I feel you.
That's important.
I think, I was gonna say, like, I think like that access and opportunity is so huge, you know what I mean? Like for artists in any medium, right? But I think that, especially when it comes to music artists, because a lot of times, like, it seems like, and this is what we talk about on the podcast a little bit, it seems like the barrier for entry when it comes to being an artist, like, gets lower and lower, like, each generation, which is great.
Sure.
But then to be able to refine those skills, to be able to have, like, access to opportunity to be in spaces where you can continue to grow as an artist, those things don't always come about, like, the same way that you might be able to get into the art form. And I think you're someone, like, now in your role with the Boston Foundation, like, we have, like, these grants, we have the Live Arts Boston grant, you know what I mean? Like, that's like one example, but this is about providing access to opportunity, you know what I mean? So what does it kind of mean? Because I know there's also been some shifts and changes in the way that that's even, like, rolled out.
Oh, yeah.
Like, how is that kind of, what were some of the decisions around shifting the structure for that to be able to make it so that it could be even more impactful for artists now?
In terms of grants?
For the Live Arts Boston grant specifically, but yes, in terms of, like, grants and, like, kind of just that landscape.
So the decision to go into corporate was not an easy one for me, because I'm like, I love my community where I can be me.
Yeah.
I don't have to sacrifice whatever. But for me, it was critical at that time because Boston was changing in its leadership. There was more Black people in power than we'd ever seen before. And I'm like, that's the door. We all gonna, rally around. That's not how this is happening. But I made the decision to go into corporate because I wanted to widen the door.
Understood.
And, from the Isabel Stewart Gardner Museum, that was all about bringing Black people to an all-white space that didn't welcome them before, and that there was a Black person who could do that for 3 years. So at that time, we had the most people of color in the Gardner. And I will take the credit now at that moment. And for the first time, the institution received a nomination through the Boston Music Awards.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I'll give my little credit. And then at that time, things just didn't work out. I think that, after George Floyd, all the institutions are going through their performative justice.
Yeah.
And I wanted a change, and philanthropy found me. I didn't find it.
Right.
But the leadership that was happening in Boston, I'm like, I can get behind that and bring all these artists that I've gotten to know over the time in the world of philanthropy, which could be considered a dirty word if you look at it. Because it's also rooted in capitalism, but good things can happen if you position that right. So when I landed at the Boston Foundation, my whole thing was, how do I change the relationship between organizations and artists to philanthropy? Because it had always been traumatic.
Yeah.
You have to say certain things. You gotta put on your show, and I'm like, you shouldn't have to do that, in my opinion.
Right.
I didn't have to do that when I was approaching them at that time. So I want to change that dynamic, and then look at our existing programs, Live Arts Boston being one of them, and really figure out a more holistic approach to supporting artists. Right. It's not just giving them money.
Right.
Yeah.
That's about that big. It's beyond the grant. How can a foundation leverage its resources for sustainability with the arts and culture community?
What does that look like outside of having the money? What does the sustainability look like for the artist?
It's endless, but the biggest thing for me is the mindset shift about how we talk about our sector. It's not arts and culture, we're a creative economy.
Okay.
We've never talked about it that way.
Yeah.
We are literally one of the 3 drivers for the state.
Yeah.
In terms of, like, income?
GDP, economic development.
Okay.
Arts and culture is like a 28, is it a B? I want to say 28 billion or $28 million.
so.
I didn't know that. Wow.
For the state.
Yeah.
And followed by that is education and construction.
Okay.
Okay.
So you can't be ignored.
Man.
But we've always talked about arts and culture as a performative output,
right.
Yeah.
not about all of you are creating jobs and content,
Facts.
Mhm.
right? That can then be monetized. Like you hired the cameraman, you like all of this is business investment,
For sure.
right? But we've never talked about that like a sector. It's always been the number of artists served, how many performances you've done, the age range of the audiences that have engaged with your work, and that's pretty much it.
Right.
The actual impact, the cause and effect that our programming, our creative practices draw people to come to our city and spend their dollars in our community,
Yeah.
or it brings other industries here.
And I can imagine another question you got to ask is that's important is like, can people maintain a livelihood while pursuing arts full time?
They can.
Here,
They can.
you know, because how can you motivate people to come
here.
if they can't do that?
Yeah.
I think the other issue too is like retention.
Retention
I mean,
is
a lot
hard.
of people leave.
Yep.
Yeah.
You know, and they go into different communities where those cities, whatever places that they're going to, put the time and investment into their artists.
Yeah.
Which I don't know if a lot of people in Boston feel the same.
We
sentiment.
don't anymore.
Boston just gets a bad rap in general. It's
Well, what's
we
crazy-
don't even know we have
about
black.
that.
They don't
No,
even
no,
know we
no,
have
no, no.
black
Let's not
people
do
here.
that.
They
Let's
don't know
not
we
do that.
have these
Listen,
artists.
when it comes to
you say
education-
Boston music scene to anybody else
they're gonna be
outside of
like,
they're like, what are you
who you
talking
talking
about?
about?
Like,
in that specific space,
who
I
specifically
agree
do you
with you.
mean by Boston?
Marky Mark.
In that space, I agree
like
with you.
that, you know what I mean? There's just this idea, and you know, what do we do to kind of just get rid of that? Not just get rid of it, but educate the people.
I just think the difference is that
outside of here.
Boston has different priorities. When you even brought up the idea of like allegedly the tech industry, like there's certain incentives that they're giving to these companies to build buildings
Thank you.
here, but
They have
then
a
they don't
different
actually
vision for the
host
city
it.
than the folks that
You know what I
live
mean?
in the
You
city.
have Google and all these different companies who are building things to, on paper, we're in Massachusetts because of incentives, but they're not actually stationed here.
They're not.
They're not working at it here.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I think that's what you was alluding to.
Yeah, like the I think part of it is when you think about a New York or Philadelphia or Miami, those are also consumer brand hubs. We don't have that here. We're not a consumer brand based market
Why can't we be though? Especially with like
because every
the
other
schools,
industry,
we've got an influx of people who come every year from
Yeah.
all over the place to
we
come to our
train
schools.
the best, but the best doesn't stay here because where those headquarters are everywhere else.
Yep,
Yeah.
exactly.
Right. I would love the day where consumer brands actually spend their dollars here, but they don't. And part of that also has to just deal with the market, right? So one of the things that I was turned on to a couple years ago that I'm like, I don't know if I can change it, but it needs to change is, you know, all the things that are happening culturally in New York and Philadelphia and LA, whatever. Part of that has to do with GDP, gross domestic product. If we're just to focus on Black people, we are one of the smallest GDPs for the city of Boston.
I see.
So that means that major brands don't see a value if
No
there's
incentive,
not,
yeah.
right? So then we're boo-hooing, why can't we get T-Pain? I'm like, they're going to Philly because there's a large Black population that's there.
They have
right?
purchasing power and they got money to spend.
I mean, Philadelphia has its challenges, but those corporations are going to spend their dollars in a market that actually has a high GDP.
and a return on investment. That's
And
all
we
they
don't-
care
we
about.
don't
at the
have
end
it
of
here.
We know that.
And part of that also has to deal with if we actually own some things, it would actually change the market. We don't own anything. And granted, for the few folks that are restaurateurs, folks that actually have small enough venues, it's not enough to compensate for the market that's this small.
I see.
So the only other thing that I'm feeling that is possible is one, we actually have to change our language about how we talk about the creative economy because all of us have been contributors to that, but we've never seen a dime of it.
For sure.
And once we have that,
That's a fact.
I completely agree.
if we've never
Sorry about
understood it from that perspective, then all we're ever going to complain about is that we're not an industry,
Yep.
right? It's always been here, but we've actually never collaborated.
I was gonna say, is that the issue that we don't mobilize?
We don't mobilize enough. One, we don't take the issues serious, but we'll complain about the issues.
Yeah. Well, mobilize for the complaints.
Sometimes.
Even then,
I think it
everyone
has to be
different
something that's on like
agendas.
really
Yeah.
grand scale for
Different
us to
perspectives.
mobilize, though, historically.
And I mean, to
City.
me, the biggest things that, you know, we've missed in the past that could be a turnkey point is our state budget every year,
Mhm.
right? Right now, arts and culture is funded from the state budget at like $28 million. If you just do the math, if you want to divide that across 351 towns, about less than $80,000 per town that gets funding for the arts.
Well, you got to imagine it's not equally invested.
Like, you know,
Boston's
old
a
school
way
stuff.
larger,
No.
spe- and some communities
Boston
aren't
is the
invested.
second largest place that's invested. The first one is the middle of Massachusetts,
Worcester?
the Berkshires.
Really? I would have
Yes.
never
Oh,
imagined.
that makes sense. They got their museums. Yeah, yeah.
It's not just music; it's the
Yeah,
museums,
facts.
I see.
right? The towns that center themselves on main arteries that contribute to all the arts and culture that's being made. We don't have that in Boston.
What museum is so special over there?
Well, I mean, Mass Mocha's over there. They got a couple other ones that are like
You got
smaller, like
Tanglewood
niche
that's over there. That's a
museums.
big
I
draw.
know nothing about this.
You should probably go experience it.
It'd be high, low-key.
I don't know anything about this.
It's a lot of
Does
yeah.
the NBA Hall of Fame have anything to do with this or no?
that's
out the way.
I hope not.
This is free too.
The arts
like,
and culture, they're like, yo,
this-
basketball, like the art of basketball.
You know,
of
like
real.
you want to think about all the reasons why you leave to go somewhere to spend your dollars. There's got to be certain conditions that have to be there for you to spend more money,
Mhm.
right? And we have the same opportunity here. The problem is that it's not equitable of how that is spread across,
Yeah.
right? So rural areas spend more money for their art. We do not.
I'm surprised by that.
Interesting.
We just don't. And so again, the economics.
Do you think
of
that
it
has to
is
do
their
with just
problem.
kind of like priority level? You know what I mean? Because in
Part-
order
I
for
mean-
you to even invest in arts, there's got to be a level
gotta
of
value it.
disposable income that you need to have.
Partly,
Yeah.
partly,
know.
but I mean, I think about Philly.
Not
It-
true.
There was literally a choice with the mayor and the governor about how important is the arts to our city and how much we're willing to put towards put towards this potential revenue generating
Mhm.
industry. They made that choice. We've made a choice.
Mm-hmm.
How that has shown up is the rate of artists leaving the city.
Right.
So
we gotta
that's
mobilize
no, but
them
that's what
as
I was
a- as an
interested
artist.
to
That's what
know
I'm saying.
though.
It's a
'cause
retention issue.
I'd
Yeah.
like to
Retention.
think from the outside looking in that there's been an increased investment in the
Yeah.
arts in Boston. I see City Hall Plaza being reformed so that
And
it
that is
becomes
great
more.
during this term.
Yeah,
What does
facts.
that mean for the future mayors?
Okay, I see.
Right. This is where artists have to start putting pressure,
Yeah.
Mhm.
you know, on all these candidates, even the current mayor.
Mhm.
How important is the arts to, you know, that you increase the actual city budget from what it's always been?
Yeah. Facts.
Well, that's the power of working together because they don't listen to us individually because we
They don't have
we
to.
don't fund their campaigns. We're
There's
not a
not-
big enough
When I think about
source of.
I'll put it this way. When I think about the city of New York, the city of New York had a program that was funded by the Mellon Foundation that basically gave X amount of artists that participated in the program a salary every year, health benefits, just so they can
That's important.
actually
Okay.
do their art. It was like
That's tough.
$125 million, right?
Mhm.
For 3 years. That changed the trajectory for the arts. Now, those artists mobilize and organize to hold their city and their state accountable
Yeah.
to figuring out how to make artists not 1099s, but W-2s.
Right. I like that.
I would love
That's fun.
if just 50 artists
Yeah.
of color.
Can have that.
Right.
I didn't know if it was capable. I seen,
feel like-
the past Grammys, Chapel Rowan went
Yeah,
on
facts. She
stage
was
and like
definitely-
advocated for, artists to have health insurance and all that.
Yeah.
But I just thought she was kind of like speaking into a void. It's like, okay, that's nice to say, but is that
If we
really
don't-
practical?
It can
It's-
be.
I-
You
yeah.
have you
I'm
have
learning.
organizations like Artists at Work that are literally doing that model across the country. They're doing it in Springfield. They're trying to do it here in Boston, but really shifting the way that you cannot look at artists as lesser than or a career that doesn't have any value, because we know what happens that when we as a country, as a world, go through very traumatic experiences, the first industry that's called
Right.
is ours.
Right.
Yeah.
We're the last still to recover.
Facts.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's gotta be the understanding that beyond your music, your poetry, whatever, that just for the sake of what we contribute has to be worth and incorporating the state budget
Yeah.
and the city budget. That all these representatives that represent the state and the Senate and the House, why are artists not holding them accountable?
Yeah.
Because Catherine can't do it by herself.
No, she
And
can't.
guess what I'm doing? By myself. Right? There's more of y'all than there is one individual organization.
That's
For sure.
And yet, when it comes to the urgency and care and concern around advocating for the basic things you need, the majority of the people that show up for those are white women.
Yeah.
And guess what they get? They get the money.
You're calling that like you see it, yeah.
They get the money.
And I thought it was amazing what you just said in terms of just like you know, the arts is and the music, or you know, our culture is the first thing they're running to
Every
you know,
time,
during periods of down periods, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's why it'd be incorrect to look at, you know, music or, you know, investing into the arts as a dollar sign return on investment, because the return is intangible.
Very
you know,
intangible.
the way it makes people feel, the impact, the motivation it can cause someone to do something else in a whole different industry, and you can't really measure that.
That is the biggest challenge that any of the other industries or even federal infrastructure struggle with our entire sector, because it is all about change behavior, but you may not see it in 10 years from now.
Yeah.
So even the metrics of evaluating what art and music does is held to a federal standard that's from like the 1920s.
Yeah.
And that's what's kept
That
us
doesn't
out of
even
the loop.
translate.
It's kept us out of the loop for even federal dollars, right? We have the National Endowment for the Arts that's now being in question. That was founded by JFK because he saw the power of what the arts can do for a community. That's not every president.
Right.
You know what I mean? But the economics that we're starting to get into as a sector, you know, what happens when there is a festival that's, you know, run locally? What happens over the course of a week to small businesses around that area? Do they see an increase?
Right.
And sales that they do, we just economically contributed. We have an economic impact
For sure.
versus how many artists are on my stage. But if I want to talk about how many artists on my stage, I want to talk about that individual band leader that had to hire these other 5 people,
Right.
where they rehearsed, what was the cost of that small business that they talked to. And for that small business, did they see an influx because our festival was coming?
There you go.
That's a different conversation than just how many artists are put on the stage.
Yeah.
And
That's the
most
bigger picture
people
thinking.
only look at our industry as.
And that's also that's hard to track. I can
It
imagine
is.
too, right?
But I think that it's to your point though. You have to have like the folks that are willing to kind of like contribute to that next step, because if their mindset is not around like the bigger picture as well as being community oriented, then everything kind of stays stagnant. Or maybe even like you said, depending on administration, things might even fall off. You feel me? Like that's what the pressure's about. It just got me thinking about like, and like the organizer part of my brain, just like for artists, like art, like I feel like artists do care, right? We all care about each other. We all like have like an inherent just like nature about us where we're like, we want to see people succeed when they're in a similar industry as us.
Exactly.
Right. And I think it's especially true for art because we know that it's creativity that's being poured out of you. And sometimes those things take a lot of like emotional labor to be able to produce and all types of things. Right. So we care. But I think that if we don't have a direction for mobilizing, right, if we don't really know like where to point some of that energy, then it won't happen. You know what I mean?
It won't.
I'm interested, like, I don't know. This is what I'm thinking of. Like, how do we do it? Like, you feel me?
Well, we don't have, I'll say this, what we lack as a city, as a Commonwealth. And I point to unions because they do it really well.
Yeah.
They know how to organize.
Yeah.
We don't have cultural organizing. We don't have artists organizing. If we did, we might have a different conversation.
Yeah.
Is the problem the internet?
No,
Is it just
it's
that
not
everyone's got a voice? It's not like back in the day where it's like you
What'd you
had
say, the
certain
internet?
leaders.
the internet.
I said the internet.
Gotcha.
You know, as much as it helps to, you know, magnify our,
I don't think so.
you know, our voices.
I don't think it's the internet.
You don't think
that
we're creating smaller boats?
I think that there's knowledge gaps. I
Okay.
think there's
That part.
huge knowledge gaps of, well, politics is messed up because of X.
Yeah.
I'm like, if that is your mindset, you're always going to think about politics that way, right? But how do you utilize how can you utilize going into your senator's coffee hour in your hood for an hour and just have a conversation?
Right.
That can make the difference, right? You didn't have to go far. You just had to know when the coffee hours were at. And just talk about your art. And talk about the issues, right? There are organizations, art organizations, not art organizations that do this work, but they also have to focus on their own mission and vision.
Yeah.
And so that's what I mean by there's more individual artists than there are organizations to even do the advocacy work. But imagine the day where the cultural organizing of artists across any industry, any subdiscipline, any genre, quarterly, whatever, met to talk about the issues, get ready and have town halls with their state representatives and ask them some hard ass questions.
Yeah.
Because they're not thinking about it. They don't have to unless
We put it in their
you
face.
make it an issue.
Yeah.
And I think that we also in Boston, we got to be strategic with it too.
Yes.
I know that for like, you think about like the coffee hours that some of like the mayor might have, or like these, local representatives might have and stuff like that. Like I've seen it where they've gone to these things and they commandeer them, right? They're like, this is my issue and my issue is like the most important thing. If you don't care about my issue, you're bad, whatever your position is and stuff like that. And it's like, imagine how like powerful that is. That's a statement, right? And it's meaningful. And the people remember that. It's like stands for something. Oftentimes things get derailed after that. So imagine how powerful it can be if you take that energy, right? And you collaborate with another group whose issue is important as well, right? Who also feel the same fire, the same verb, right? Where it's like, yo, this issue is important. My issue is the most important too. Let's work together.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? How do we bring it so that, because I think one of these things that's understated, right, is like the power of art is more than just being able to present yourself as an artist, but also to be able to present your art. If you're pulling up to these things and you're making your grand gesture, your grand statement, but there's performance, right? There's also a showcase of what it is that you're doing. It's not only like gravitating the attention towards it, but also showing people why it's important.
Exactly.
Because you're going to make them feel something beyond just the words. You know what I mean? It's just something I'm thinking about because it's like, I do think that we do, like the collaborative effort has to be there as well. Like people can't be afraid to operate outside of their silo. You know what I'm saying? Because a lot of people, because there is knowledge gaps, like, listen, if you're not an organizer, but you're an artist, you feel me? Maybe the artist and the organizer need to be working together. You know what I'm saying? Because the issues are there. The infrastructure needs to be built on both ends, right?
Yep.
We all have things we care about, but some people might not know how to go about it. And some people might not have the tools to go about it in a way that's going to feel like good. You know what I mean? Or a way that it might be feel respected across the board. So I think those things that we have to think about.
That's
Yeah,
what
And there is overlap too between the communities already. So I don't know. Listen.
I think we have to let go of our egos and the big block of woods that sit on our shoulder. Like we're at a critical point where the arts literally could be gone tomorrow.
Facts.
It seems like that way. And I was gonna ask, just with the current administration that we've got now, and you kind of, as someone who's
On the federal level.
Oh, yes, on the federal level. With the Trump administration. Of course.
There's many administrations. Listen, we got, I agree with you all for you. Anything you could have said, I'd be like, facts.
No. We know what we're talking about. And it's someone who's, advocated all their life on just protecting these spaces, especially, for the Black community, for the arts, music community. When you see the rhetoric of, the anti, DEI agenda that they're pushing, and just, again, like you said, at any time, any of this stuff could be gone. It really seems like, they're literally letting him streamline all of these executive orders to get these stuff done. Do you have fears about
I'm hella
the future?
optimistic. I'm so optimistic. Because you know what? Here's the thing. Black and brown people have never needed DEI to do anything.
Facts.
DEI
doesn't even serve us primarily.
It has been really a tool for institutions.
Okay.
Right. We choose who we hire because of what we see. And if they happen to be us, great. Right. But it's not the only thing.
Of course.
It doesn't define us, but we know what happens when we uplift one of our own, what that does for everybody else.
Fact.
Yep.
That is a human trait that these other beings do not have. Okay.
Okay.
So I am more optimistic. What I am worried about is how quickly we will become comfortable again in our own convenience of what we think is okay and acceptable. That's not human behavior.
Yeah.
Like what? What were some examples?
This current administration, how they're acting.
Yeah.
Right. My thing, tapping back into my METCO experience, just look at the behavior of this person. Okay. They had already said years ago they're here to cause chaos. If we weren't paying attention, years ago, this should not be a surprise right now.
Not at all.
Right? And that this person and their administration wrote a whole list of what they were going to
They
do.
had a plan. We shouldn't be surprised at all.
Right. So either we're going to get comfortable and become so desensitized that we're okay with it because it's just my little world.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And just not know thy neighbor.
Mm-hmm.
Or are we really going to lean into what it means to be decent human beings?
Right.
And actually work across the table with each other to advance a different agenda. And that's the part that's difficult, but that's the part I'm becoming more optimistic about. Where there's going to be difficulty is Black women are tired of leading the front. So that means, dear Black men, dear young Black men, what's going to happen?
Step it up.
What's going to happen?
Yeah.
Right.
I agree with we're going to get desensitized. I don't know necessarily because of us becoming comfortable, but it does feel like there's just a lack of control that we feel like we have as an individual. It feels like whatever they're doing, I'm worlds away from that and I can't do anything about it. I can only do what's in front of me.
It's going to roll out. If it hasn't already, it's going to roll in the checkbook first.
Facts. I was going to say, one thing that we saw even during the pandemic, right, is there was a lot of like relief for artists.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that relief went towards like the larger artists, like first. You feel me? And in mass, like in the most amounts. And we saw how they were spending it, right? It's like
the funds.
And it's like, I think that's an example of it where it's like, oh, like this crazy thing is happening, but it's not that bad for me. And I think that is like another form of comfortability. You feel me? It's like complacency where it's like, if as long as it doesn't hurt me, right, directly as an individual, then I'm fine with it. You know what I mean? Even though it will impact my sector, even though it impact my neighbor, even though it might impact the people who I'm impacting, right, and take away from my own like ability, like we see.
Well, we
like,
talked about that last
before.
week. Yeah, we talked about that last week in terms of just like what's happening to, immigrants to this country. It might not affect us, but it's like we can't carry that same mindset that a lot of people,
part of it is, and
block turn a blind eye.
That part, for what it's worth, we're gonna feel it in our food.
Yep.
For a core to just a basic need, we're gonna feel it in that food.
Yep.
In terms of supply decline.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
And also the quality of it as well.
What it takes to get to your plate.
How much is available?
Huge price point, quality, but when you cut out the majority of the workforce that is of immigrant people, we're going to feel less than on our plate. There might be more fights in the store.
Yep.
Not only will the prices go up.
Seen it early.
You seen the guy with the cart and he had all the eggs in it?
The aisles be empty because there's a snowstorm coming tomorrow and it's already scarcity.
You was talking about that walking in.
Yeah,
actually.
I'm like
it's insane.
There's only so much your booty can do with toilet paper. Like we're getting
literally,
But I think what I have found to be interesting when I talked about I know how to do white people shit, this is nothing new. It's just worse because this person has a platform.
Yeah.
In my opinion.
Nothing new. It felt like we were making progress towards something. Like at least
when
front
you
facing.
think about U.S. history,
yeah,
Reaganomics. I mean, this current administration is kind of rubbing up against that.
For sure.
Right?
Oh,
but the point is that our history as a country, it does a wave.
Mm-hmm. I think that to your point, I think one of the things about progress, right, is that if it can be taken away like that, then it was never progress. You know what I'm saying?
You think so?
It's about because I think it has to be long standing, and you have to be like. To me, like real progress is when you put the channels in place for it not to be able to be dismantled instantaneously. You know what I'm saying? And anytime that can happen, then it was superficial. You know what I'm saying? It was something that might have been like helpful for a look, but that the intention behind it was that we'll do it for now with the intention that eventually it'll be taken away. And when it gets taken away, we're not doing anything to stop it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Man, that's just a problem with the system.
My worry is just that now we're just kind of going to be in this cycle where it's like, all right, we've got, one party who has all this control, and then they're going to run all the, agendas they want during their 4 years or their 8 years. And then it's just going to swing the other side. But it's only going to cause more extremes than actually, like you said, reaching across the aisle.
Part of it is the everyday person has to make a choice about, when was the last time you talked to your neighbor?
Yeah.
Like we haven't done that in a long time. Like that's
I
why
agree.
the family unit and compounds were destroyed because that actually created the opportunity for people to be self-sufficient amongst a compound.
Yeah.
Now with the individualism happening, we don't know who's next door, right? My optimism is certain systems will fall because they have to. It's a choice of what's the new ecosystem that has to happen. And that, do we need to start incorporating more of the barter system? Because cash can only do so much.
Yeah.
It's going to be about skill and talent and time, right? Which we have to barter in some degree. We're going to have much more vulnerability in a lot of different ways. And that's going to be, in my opinion, because of technology. We've been so reliant on it, we've forgotten the basic skills of just communicating.
Yeah.
Agree.
So just the foundation of having a conversation with someone's going to either reset us, force us to collapse, or we're going to have to move differently as a country. The rate of deporting folks back to their country, those countries are going to start shutting us off.
Yeah.
Oh yeah,
facts.
they're gonna give us the same
So
treatment.
to me, it's almost like Total Recall times 9. If you've ever seen that movie.
It's a good movie.
No,
But it's literally where we're headed, where when we thought that we were the only superpower, we're about to be checked.
Oh yeah.
In this game. And we have to make a set of decisions. I think that for Black and brown people, however you want to self-identify with that we actually have to tap into some other sources of inspiration, motivation that are not superficial to where we are right now.
Right.
Because we've been so desensitized, we've forgotten our own values, our own worth. And that's the war first, way before all this other stuff.
Mm-hmm.
That if we actually reset that, I think we'll be in a much better state, in my opinion. Because we can grow our own stuff. We've been growing our own stuff. We've had to make our own stuff anyway.
Yeah.
With our own system.
Right.
But we've been so plugged into this one that now that is under threat because a set of people would sell their mother to the highest bidder. That's not a human. That's a being.
Yeah.
That we have to start actually relying on the community aspect of what has always sustained us.
Right.
Yeah.
And that to me is the test. In my opinion.
No, we definitely got it. We got to get rid of the individualism that we have. Like that's all it comes down to.
You
Because
have to get rid of capitalism.
People
Facts.
aren't willing to sacrifice the conveniences that they have. You know what I mean? Just in simple, not using certain social media platform because you don't agree with who runs the thing. Or not using Amazon and investing in something that's more local, but that's not as inconvenient. I mean, that's not as convenient. Something landing on your door.
Of course.
That we're prioritizing convenience and what's best for us than actually what's good for the community.
Oh yeah.
And I don't think a change is going to happen unless we're willing to look ourselves in the mirror and just
I mean, not for nothing.
I
Just
agree.
in U.S. history, drastic things are happening right now.
Mhm.
Right, where our food is at threat, our skies are at threat.
Oh,
For real, our
Beyond
education
return.
is at threat right now.
sorry.
Right, the ways of learning have to be different now.
Yeah.
Medicine, everything. It's
Every-
really everything.
It's really everything. Like, not for nothing, but I hope this never happens in our lifetime. But like, just the fact of breathing might be a barter.
Facts.
It is in other parts of the world already.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Talking about those canisters where you got the clean air in.
Well, that would be one possible solution, but that's also going to be a very financially based decision.
Oh God.
Like when you said that, I was thinking about like China already, where their air quality is already very poor.
Yep.
You know what I mean? In certain parts of the country, there's certain ways that they have to mitigate that issue. You know what I mean? So
Versus others.
And
we're going to
there's
see that issue definitely starting to migrate and happen here as well in
absolutely.
the United States.
It's not going to be as drastic right now, but where it hits for current and young generations is the technology.
And I think
Because the basic skills have been forgotten. Like, no one does home economics. No one knows
Yeah,
how to
fact.
sew.
We was talking
and
about that.
cook.
We be talking about this.
right,
No cap. I'm telling you.
Like,
they
I'm
took
from
it all
that era. I'm
back.
like, I still know how to sew with the needle and thread, but that is not this generation. They're going to be
this is true.
suffocating the most from technology.
Yeah. The
'Cause
AIs, everything's
They're
easier.
fine
This
with
is
the
true.
convenience because
Yeah.
they don't have nothing yet.
And they also never knew anything else.
And to circle back to what we were even talking about from the very beginning, I think that's why it's even more important to make effort to invest back from where your family came from,
Mm-hmm.
to build back up the community that my family left in Haiti to chase a better life. It's like, okay, I have the privileges and the luxury now to take what I've acquired here to go rebuild what
Yeah.
was destroyed back there. You know what I mean? I think we all have that responsibility.
Well, not everybody has the privilege of knowing where they come from.
No, for sure.
Right?
I'm speaking to the people who do.
And a lot of
Gotta
people might feel
learn.
like they have equity in this country, so it's not easy enough for just
Yeah, it's
to
tough.
leave.
No,
Like,
it's
no,
tough.
I
But
helped
you know,
build
we
this
gotta
shit.
do the
think
knowledge,
that-
man. No cap. We gotta
I
do
think the
knowledge.
running joke for me about this country, love it, hate it, all the fun things is if you want to succeed here, you get a degree or you start a business. That is the very functional United States.
Yeah.
Quality of life, you gotta go somewhere else.
Yeah.
Whether you want that slow, fast, whatever.
This is the rat race.
In this country,
It's the rat race.
since its very foundation, you benefit from the tax system if you have a business, right?
Yeah.
Or you get a degree in whatever that is now,
Right.
either to go run someone else's business or you start your own. It's one of the two options. Everything else, you want to go dancing, you want to salsa, merengue, bachata, you want to whatever. You have a
Step out.
better fighting chance of that quality of life
Yeah.
where it's appreciated and ingrained somewhere else.
Yeah.
That's not here.
It's all perspective.
And it's the reality, though.
Yeah.
It's real.
Things to think about.
Literally. I mean, I just want to thank you, Catherine, seriously, like for this entire conversation. It's been eye-opening, and just to hear your story, it's motivational and inspirational to say the
Sure.
least. And I hope a lot of people can take away from, the frameworks that you laid down and your journey itself. And, even the small things and just throwing yourself at every opportunity you could
Absolutely.
find. You know what I mean? I know when I was in school, that was the last thing I was worried about. Doing the extracurricular activities and stuff.
Like, give me my bare minimum.
Yeah.
Trying to get my degree.
We were going back to the dorm room and making music and
I
stuff
bet.
but there's a lot of opportunities that we're missing out on. There's rooms that we could be in and having an input if
Yeah.
we threw ourselves in those environments.
Sure.
So it's kind of, everybody should be taking themselves out of their comfort zone,
You
taking
have to.
and being a little bit less selfish. I think that's the biggest
Huge.
message that's being echoed here. So I literally just want to thank you for your commitment to the community and how much you've done for the arts and music scene here and for just Black folk. Like seriously,
Just keep it a buck. Yeah,
everything you
facts.
cemented. So when you talk about the shoulder, you standing on the shoulders of giants from your past,
Elma
we're gonna
Lewis,
be standing on
others.
yours as well. So
No,
I appreciate
for
you for
Thank
everything.
y'all.
And I'd
For
love to
sure.
pick your brain
Even
even more, but I know you're a busy woman. But thank you for taking the time and
Thank y'all for having me.
Nah,
of
I
course,
appreciate it.
All
Definitely
right.
appreciate
It's been
it.
fun.
It's like this is what it's all about. You feel me? Like
this is.
this is how that happens. You feel me? Like, yeah, I got a lot racing through my mind now, like ways that I feel like I can like help mobilize my community more. You know what I mean? So it's very appreciated.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, even the conversation about the creative economy, like that's something I've been pushing in a lot of different projects that I'm working on right now, from different perspectives. And I think hearing a lot of the stuff that you said today, I was like, oh, wow, I didn't think about it in that way. You know what I mean? And I think that's what's about, just hearing all the different
Facts.
sides of it to try to, paint this canvas as colorful as we can together. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
So
Yeah,
Thank you.
We've got a responsibility as artists. It's not enough to just put out the best art. That's a motivation for
Right.
sure. But we can't do this alone. And again, we hold a responsibility to hold the people in charge accountable. To be able to even advance this landscape we're operating in.
Ours y'all, so.
Make it happen. We gotta use it.
I know we
We gotta use it.
We try to use this platform for good. We're bad for the community,
I
but
love
we
it.
try to be good for the community. But appreciate everybody for watching. I hope you guys took away. I know you guys took away from something from this. And y'all heard the criteria. They know the criteria now
Facts.
for bands.
At the very least, you got that.
So don't be
That's on them.
surprised. All right.
That's on them.
And if you and we know a couple friends that graced the stages. So salute to them for sure for having that opportunity to do so. And we can't wait for this year's Bands Fest. We were there last year. We were recording. We were going to every event because that's the thing. We highlighted the music, but there's vendors there,
Yeah,
sure.
serving food from local businesses and dance competitions and all that. It's a beautiful community event and it's free.
It's free. We have I'll just do a
No. Give your message to the people. Do
shameless
it.
plug. So BAMS Festival is June 28th this year. We've made a decision to do one day. However, we have a new initiative called Momentum, which is a 4-day citywide activation.
Okay.
With curators, artists, producers, and organizations centering dopeness, our imagination, our creativity, and creating an actual creative hub centered through the lens of Blackness. So we're partnering in fashion and tech. We're partnering in film. There's about 3 or 4 events per day that will run June 26th, June 27th, June 29th, and 30th. Really to give people the opportunity to experience all the things we say the city doesn't have.
Right.
We're starting this new initiative to actually work across the table and let people do what they do and centering it as part of a destination here in the city. So it's 5 full days of activity.
Starting this year.
Starting this year, yeah.
Momentum.
Oh, wow. It sounds like you
Momentum.
got a million more jobs to do, Catherine. So shout out to that, but I can't imagine the stress behind that.
No, it's beautiful because, again, a creative economy.
Right.
Like talking to them about, our contributions to the millions of dollars generated, we need to now reap some of that money if it's not going to be given back to us. So
Facts.
that's like the next calling at this point, that the festival does what it does, but these partnerships, the things that are already happening, have to be much more centralized because we don't do that enough. So that's what Momentum is this year, and the lineup will be announced very soon, which I'm super excited about.
All right. Maybe we'll sneak peek off
Nope,
mic.
ain't telling you. My mama don't even know.
Like,
All right,
If your mom don't know,
I can't.
I hear it.
But
we
no,
know
we're-
how to
we're
keep
super
a secret.
excited. Yeah,
No,
I
I'm
bet.
playing.
But no, I'm just super excited, very proud of all the people we're working with. And yes, while the festival is free, we always encourage donations because it's a lot of work.
Yeah.
Of course.
And we believe in the notion that artists should not be doing things for free.
Facts.
So any investment that people can give, $5, $10, whatever, it goes a long way for this organization to be sustainable, but more importantly, for us to support all the local artists and creative businesses of color that we've been doing since we started.
Right.
Does that include helping hands? You guys accept helping hands, volunteers?
Absolutely, but you got to be skilled. Like,
facts.
it's one thing to volunteer. Skill set is also very important here.
All right.
So we'll be doing an open call very soon. And if folks want to be a vendor stuff is still open till April 18th. But either way, it's going to happen.
Oh, yeah.
This
Looking
is
forward
year
to it.
7.
And
so
we going to be,
very excited.
shout out to year 7. That's amazing. Shout out to year 7. So we going to be there June 8th.
June 28th.
June 28th. We will be there, rain or shine.
Yes.
Hopefully shine.
I know. Rain or shine.
Momentum, we gonna be in the building too.
Definitely
Building, outdoor, wherever it is, we gonna be there. You know what I'm saying? Momentum.
Very
sure.
excited
We
for
gonna
it.
be
For
there.
sure. Hey, man, y'all take care. Have a good one. We are